to be honest. Yeah?
Unbelievable.
And the other thing is Robert Jenrick, because we had the amazing Peter Blexley on yesterday, who was talking about exactly what Jenrick said, which is, come to our country, you've had a hard time, but don't come to this country and set about destroying everything that attracted you here in the first place whilst trying to implement everything from whence you came. It's not about culture, religion, or anything. Absolutely come here, but don't then try and destroy everything, the fabric of what we are, I suppose.
Can you keep the voice as it is now? Because I think you've reached the right...
I'm going to try and not get
good.
I don't want to stay too excited.
It's actually given me butterflies.
Like that woman in your kitchen gave me.
News at 4, coming...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Hey, very good afternoon. Welcome along. This is Drive for Tuesday on Talk, the home of free speech and common sense. JK here until 7 o'clock. The voice, the man flu, the real flu is subsiding. The voice is getting stronger by the day, but we're still just going to keep it at that level so it maintains itself for the next 3 hours. Thanks for tuning in, by the way. Loads to talk about. And as ever, your involvement on Drive is most appreciated. On screen, you can see it. I'll tell you as well, you can call us right now. Jodie taking your calls. 0344 499 1000. 0344 499 1000. Your text message is always welcome to the show. 87222. 87222. Start your message with the word talk. It's difficult. Sometimes we come into the office and we sit down at the end of the day and you think, where do I start? We talked a lot of this yesterday. Stuff will happen overnight. For me, there are two main stories today, and two main stories that have dominated the calls and the news agenda, certainly on Talk in the last 24 hours. Starmer responding to criticism for not calling a public inquiry into the grooming gang scandal that seems to be engulfing so many people. He lashed out at a far-right bandwagon, which is essentially, I think, quite possibly the worst thing he could have said. That, of course, has led to certain people saying this is a cover-up. You were the Director of Public Prosecutions. My question is deeper than that. I would like to know why, since... not just now, and I'm the biggest fan of Keir Starmer by a mile, but he's been in power for 6 months. This disastrous, disgraceful, I think, national scandal, potential cover-up even, has been going on for years and years. Many governments, not just this one, the last one or the one before that, seemingly have done nothing. And I'm not into conspiracy theories, and I'm not into peddling stuff that might not be true, but it does beg the question, as I said to Ian, is there more to this? Does this go higher? Why on earth, in a civilised society, are we not saying children have been raped, OK? That's not an informed choice. They've been raped by people who might have been imprisoned. Many haven't. Some have been released. I was reading about the leader of one in Rotherham who's back out in the community, for Christ's sake. I don't understand, and I said it yesterday. Yes, there should be a public inquiry. I think anybody who's anybody should be saying we should have a public inquiry, but it's becoming now a political hot potato. Jess Phillips taking the brunt of criticism. Some will say fairly. I think Jess Phillips has done quite a lot of good for women's rights and actually for safeguarding over the years. But she's getting it. But what about 10, 15 years ago? This has in my mind, this could be another post office scandal, whereby it's very easy to look at the post office today, but look back. That, for me, is the main news story of the day. I'd love to know what you think. In a tick, Robbie Moore, a Conservative MP since 2019 for Keighley and Ilkley, he has been calling and campaigning for an inquiry into the grooming gang since 2021. The first question to him will be obvious. Is he a far-right extremist? Because that's what Keir Starmer thinks he is. The other news story today is Robert Jenrick, defeated, of course, in the Tory party leadership by Kemi Badenoch. He was talking very tough on immigration. Badenoch's come out and has supported him. He suggested the Tories could seek to limit immigration to the UK from what he calls alien cultures. The Shadow Justice Secretary said this morning that we have seen millions of people enter the UK in recent years, and some of them have backward, frankly medieval attitudes towards women. He stood by his claim that the grooming gang scandal started with the onset of mass migration. I had Peter Blexley, who I consider one of the most balanced men that I know, on this show yesterday. And what he said about immigration resonated with me, and I was talking about it to my wife last night. Peter said, we are a country with, at our very soul and essence, we care, OK? And we have a morality. And so when people are in trouble and other countries need assistance, the United Kingdom has always done their bit. But there is no doubt that as that has happened, we have become almost too soft, and we have attracted people to this country from other countries who then spend most of their time trying to knock this country, destroy what this country was built upon, criticise it, cancel it, and implement stuff that many people in this country don't want. And that's not about religion or culture. That's just a fact of life. If you come here, embrace it, live it, give something back to us, and this can be a great place. So I'd love to know your thoughts on those two. 0344 419 1000, text to 87222. It's Talk Drive. This is JK, and this is Robbie Moore, as I said, Conservative MP for Keighley and Ilkley. How are you, Robbie? A very good afternoon and Happy New Year to you.
Yeah, Happy New Year and good to be with you.
You're a far-right thug, to be honest, according to Sir Keir Starmer, aren't you? Because you're calling for, a grooming gangs inquiry. You have indeed been campaigning for this since 2021. What do you make of Keir Starmer saying that there's a far-right bandwagon?
Well, it just shows, in my view, how out of touch our Prime Minister is, that he's having to use this type of rhetoric to cover up effectively what is has been a very, very serious issue for decades. I'm lucky enough to represent Keighley, as was Anne Cryer, who was a predecessor of mine, a Labour MP, who back in the 1990s was a sole voice on calling this issue out exactly for what it is, a minority of Pakistani men targeting white young children. And let's be honest, there has not been sufficient enough progress since then, particularly across the Bradford district, of which Keighley, as a constituency that I represent, is encompassed within.
So, of course, when these sorts of subjects start, Robbie, everybody jumps on the bandwagon, to excuse the Keir Starmer pun for a second. The bedwetters, as I call them, will say that's being racist. You're saying that this is just British Pakistani men. I approach this very straight. In Rotherham, in Oldham, in Rochdale, 8 years to bring people to justice. And the police, by their own admission at the end, were saying, and I quote, we were worried about, stirring up cultural division and causing problems. For me, that's not how you police. if you break the law, you suffer the consequences of the rules that you face if you break the law. Do we fear that very little has been done because of those reasons, and why? And this is what I really would love to get to today. Why, if it's been going on, in your words, for decades, Robbie, have successive governments seemingly decided to sweep this under the carpet? Because that will tell me, and a lot of other people, that this goes much deeper, much higher, and is much more scandalous than perhaps any of us can possibly begin to imagine.
Well, there's 2 points that I'd very much like to make here. One is the rhetoric around of what the Prime Minister has used, using this as far right, using that term, and also everyone jumping on the bandwagon. Incredibly frustrating, because what it actually does is distract us from the main issue that is going on here. Because anyone that is then branded as far right is then put into a box, so to speak, of not being able to feel that they can talk about this issue. And the real concern that I have is that unless you have sensible people that are willing to take control of the narrative and get to grips with the actual issue, as I outlined here, of those challenges, like in my constituency, like in Rotherham, Oldham, Telford, where it had been specifically identified as a minority of British Pakistani men that had been targeting white young children. Unless you have sensible people that are controlling that narrative, then you do allow the likes of what happened in my seat in 2005, Nick Griffin, the leader of the BNP, standing to be the Member of Parliament in Keighley, but because of the reasons of this issue. So therefore, politicians need to sensibly take control of this narrative. And I'm frustrated that I've been talking about this issue since 2019, when I first got elected representing Keighley, calling for an inquiry into child sexual exploitation across the Bradford district, that has not happened yet. Secondly, this should not be about politics. This is absolutely the difference between right and wrong. This should not be about one party taking on the other. This should be about our survivors, our victims, and our families who have experienced these horrific crimes.
And actually, if I could jump in, Robbie, you're absolutely right. It's not about politics. It's about the difference between right and wrong in a civilised society. Because rest assured, I would hope and I would pray that if we heard some of what's gone on in these areas in other countries, we would describe it in appalling terms: barbaric, disgusting. Let's just look at the very essence of this. Let's get away from it's British Pakistani men. There are children being sexually abused and groomed to be sexually abused, and decades, you said. So successive governments have failed to implement reports or done anything about it. Why, oh why, did your government, since you were elected, do nothing about this? I think it's a very salient question.
I think it's a perfect question to ask. The ICSA review was set up, quite rightly, triggered by the then Home Secretary Theresa May. We've seen those recommendations that came out in 2022, of which I've called for all of those recommendations to be implemented in full previously. It was an excellent piece of work that was done, but what it did not do was focus specifically on rape gangs and this specific issue of ethnicity and the complexities associated with that when you're looking at the perpetrator and the victims, who need to be absolutely at the heart of that, which is why I believe it is necessary that a national inquiry specifically looking at gangs is called. And I would very much like to see the government do that, with specific attention given to the Bradford district, which is something that I've been calling for.
Do you feel let down that your government, your party, the one that you were elected to in 2019, didn't implement it? I'm not sticking up for Starmer. I quite like Jess Phillips. People might not understand that, but I think she's done quite a bit for safeguarding, and I think she's getting the rough end of the stick. And I also believe that she's being probably forced to not do anything, because we know who the Director of Public Prosecutions was in 2008. I want to know from you why Boris bloody Johnson, why Rishi Sunak, why Liz Truss did not implement a national inquiry, as much as Keir Starmer, with respect.
Well, I mean, I got elected in 19, and I've been calling for an inquiry since the day of getting elected. I've spoken on this issue about 40 times, I think, since I was elected in 2019. My view on this is very clear, that we need to absolutely explore those complexities and provide that reassurance to survivors. I was very pleased that we rolled out the task force under the Rishi administration with the ethnicity data being collected. But let's be frank, that should have happened a long time ago. I am pleased that this is now getting the national headlines to right now, but frustrated that it has taken so long. Governments, or should I say the state, the British state, whether it be national government or local government, in my view, has failed those victims, those families, those survivors for far too long. And it is now is the time that we need to address this issue head on. The government needs to back the call for a national...
Why do you think the government won't back it right now, Robbie?
Well, I don't know. I mean, let's be honest about this. They should do. They obviously seem to be relying on the ICSA report and the recommendations of that, which, again, it was a very good report, good recommendations that need to be acted in full. But it, as I've already outlined, it did not go far enough in specifically focusing on the on gang raping. It only looked at 6 towns, 2 of which were in the north. It never focused... Durham and St Helens. It never even focused on West Yorkshire. It only referred to the word Rotherham once, the word Pakistani once in a footnote. So that is why I'm saying it did not go far enough in looking at those complexities, which is why we need it. And further to that, what I would like to see is a national inquiry that specifically relates to convictions that must take place.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. What I was talking to somebody yesterday, I can't remember who it was because I'm getting old, and they were saying that it seems that politicians are almost blind and deaf to what the British public are interested in right now. The 2 big issues in today, in the last few weeks, immigration, we know that, we'll talk about it in a minute. This grooming gang fiasco, debacle, has captured the imagination. Why do you think the Prime Minister wouldn't absolutely buy some political capital right now and go, yeah, we're going to have a national inquiry? Why? I don't understand. It's an absolute no-brainer unless it goes higher, it goes deeper, and too many, I don't know, people in the past have got their thing. I don't know. I don't understand it, mate.
What's really important is this disenfranchisement that absolutely exists between those survivors, those families, and the British state is incredibly huge. They don't feel that the British state is on side. The one thing that the Prime Minister has in his gift is to be able to is to enact a national inquiry, which is what those victims are doing. Why is he not doing that? God only knows.
Yeah.
But what I am absolutely sure of is in his response at the press conference yesterday, he looked weak, he looked nervous. He did not look like he had the strength of the Prime Minister on this issue that we would all hope to...
Let's cut to the chase then. Some will say it's because he was the Director of Public Prosecutions. Others are saying that in the last election, this is not racist before the bedwetters jump on, this is factual. There were certain areas in this country, Muslim areas, where independent MPs, Jonathan Ashworth, who I would consider a friend, actually, who'd been on the show many, many times, would have been in the cabinet, lost his seat by 900 votes to an independent a Muslim MP whose sole mantra in that campaign was about Gaza. Nothing to do with the local community, nothing to do with these grooming gangs, nothing to do with things that affected people. There are people saying that the reason Starmer will not go anywhere near a national inquiry is because it would actually then cause him more problems with that part of the electorate that he needs to keep on side. What's yours and the Tory party's response to that, Robbie?
Well, my view is absolutely this is a factor. This is a consideration. I've had it said to me in my own seat. I've had it said to me by my own constituents that if you raise this issue too much, you run the risk of losing the election. And I'm sure previous MPs that have held seats of Keighley, but also others, have been told exactly the same thing. But if you're a good MP and you're wanting to stand up for your constituents, that shouldn't matter. This is about doing the right thing based on your core values and based on proper justice for those victims, and which is why I have gone so strong on this since 2019 when I got elected to represent Keighley, because this is the difference between right and wrong. And Cryer, who I've mentioned previously, was the last Labour MP that also represented Keighley and did the right thing. Unfortunately, other local politicians have not necessarily been robust enough on this issue, and particularly at a local level. the local leaders on Bradford Council, even our West Yorkshire Mayor, are not backing my calls for an independent inquiry.
Well, I think everybody with a brain cell would back the call. Can I just move it on to the other subject I'd like to touch upon with you, Robbie? Really good to have you on today. Robert Jenrick talking really tough on immigration today, backed by your new boss, Kemi Badenoch. He said, and I quote this morning, and of course this has been jumped on by many about the words used. He said that the Tories in government would seek to limit immigration to the UK from what he described as alien cultures. The Shadow Justice Secretary said that we have seen millions of people enter the UK in recent years, and some of them have backward, frankly, medieval attitudes to women. He stood by his claim that the grooming gang scandal started with the onset of mass migration. What's your response to that, Robbie Moore?
Well, again, at a local level, based on my own experiences, this issue was raised 2 decades ago in Keighley to do with gang rapes and gang-related grooming and the challenges associated with ethnicity. That obviously resulted in Rotherham happening, where there was a very damning report specifically on this issue. Robert Jenrick makes some points at the dispatch box there that absolutely resonate, unfortunately, with seats like mine in Keighley and those across the wider Bradford district. I do feel that we need to, when we are having the conversations on those about rape gangs or wider challenges to do with child sexual exploitation, no matter how any child is lured into this very heinous crime, all the issues around drug distribution that is also linked to child sexual exploitation, that the points that Robert made at the dispatch box are properly looked at, because they certainly resonate with constituencies like mine in the Bradford district.
I think it's very interesting, and I think I just want to go back to finish with something that you said, that as a society, morally, we have a right to protect children. They're innocent. I have 6 children. To me, this is abhorrent. I can't even begin to imagine how, not you and I, but how on a wider scale there seems to be stuff in the newspapers and on most news networks all about, you know, what's right and wrong about a public inquiry. Can we just cut to the chase? This is disgusting, abhorrent behaviour. People who do this should be locked up, incarcerated forever. These are innocent young children. These are not informed choices. This is grooming, exploitation, and has the most awful effect on these children forever. And I think we all have a right, a responsibility in society to call this out and do whatever. But I do believe, genuinely hand on heart, that this goes higher. I don't believe there can have been this sort of wall of silence for so goddamn long about something that is so, to me, abhorrent, that nobody's done anything about it, that somebody hasn't said, you know what, I'm going to fight this, I don't care. If there are people in places, in situations, who have turned a blind eye or been complete, whatever, those people have to be found out, Robbie Moore, 1,000,000%, and I'm totally with you. There has to be a public inquiry for the sake of those children, first and foremost, right?
Absolutely, and I just want to reiterate the points that I've made there. I absolutely want to see the Prime Minister enact a full public inquiry that specifically looks at rape gangs. I absolutely want to see that inquiry specifically focus as part of the wider challenges on the Bradford district. Really good to have you on, by the way. Sorry to cut you, but it's 4:20. Good to have you on. We'll get you on many more times as well. Robbie Moore, Ilkley and Keighley MP, Tory MP, who's been campaigning for that national inquiry into the grooming gang scandal since 2019 when he was elected. Starmer saying, this is a right-wing bandwagon. I'm saying this. Successive governments have let down innocent children. We owe it to those children to pressurise this government to make sure that they do the right thing. You would talk Drive, 4:22.
am grateful for anything that brings this back onto a national public platform, because it is such a monumental failure of decades in this country. So anything that draws us back into these issues, for me, is worthwhile. I think what we have to be careful of, though, Julia, is that we don't deflect from the central issues of this, which is children being raped and being failed by the authorities.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Just gone 4:25. It's Tuesday afternoon. You would talk, home of common sense and free speech. This is JK trying to get rid of the flu. Ryan is here taking your calls. Jodie is here taking your calls. Amy's here smiling. And who's that? Titus. Yeah, bloke who used to play for Ipswich Town. Titus Bramble's in. 0344 499 1000 at texts. Thank you for them, by the way. Adam Page. I wouldn't trust Keir Starmer as far as I could bleed and throw him. The grooming scandal is probably the tip of the iceberg. He hasn't achieved anything during his tenure as PM. Interesting. Davy Rees, talk. Elon on Starmer. Elon is 100% correct about Starmer. I am just waiting to see Starmer get his comeuppance for covering up the despicable gang rapes in the past. The thing is, Davy, I'm the last person in the world to stick up for Sir Keir Starmer, but you heard Robbie Moore, Conservative MP since 2019, from Keighley in Bradford, who's been campaigning for a national inquiry, just say his government didn't do it, the government before didn't do it. Why? Bill in Romsey says the government does not want an inquiry because it will cost votes and MPs their seats in Parliament. They do not care about the British people. Jez do not give up holding them to account. We made that point. Is it because of a Muslim vote that took 5 seats up north based on just Gaza, 5 independent MPs? Is Keir Starmer frightened if he opens this can of whoop-ass that it's going to come back and bite him? Is that the disgusting reason this isn't happening? Simon's in Nottingham. Regarding these grooming gangs, I think you have hit the nail on the head. I can only think of one reason why the government wouldn't have a public inquiry, and that is exactly what you're saying. There must be someone or more than one involved in it somehow higher up. Jez, says Brad in Cambridge, good afternoon. You said that this could become as big as the post office scandal. There's one problem with that. The mainstream media got behind the post office scandal, but the BBC, Channel 4, etc. won't go near this one. I respectfully suggest the BBC and Channel 4 aren't the mainstream media anymore, Brad, if we've got anything to do with it. Hello to Tad Davison. Tad says, I think you're right. This scandal goes far higher than mere chief constables and senior politicians. I believe it extends to the church and royalty, and we already know they both have form. Keep at it. I'm pretty sure you're onto something. I feel like I want to tell the story about the old man, but I'm going to check with Ryan before I do that. Let's go to the phone lines. Adam is in Ramsbottom. Adam, welcome to Talk Drive. What you got, my friend?
Hello, Joseph. Thanks for having me on to chat to you. I had a little bit of a rant earlier with the previous person I spoke to, and I've calmed down now a little bit. I think that the British politicians for the last 30, 40 years, since my lifetime anyway, they've all been cowards, total cowards, and they cannot do anything. I mean, the last person you had on, whoever he was, said exactly the same they've all said all day long. And it was, oh, I was speaking about this 2000 and this and 2000 and that. Well, what's happened? Nothing. You've done nothing. You stand there and you brush it under the carpet every single time. Every single politician from when this all first came out till now is a coward. This is what I'm trying to put across, Jezza, because how can you not be if you're not doing nothing about it?
I remember.
Girls get raped.
I am completely with you. It to me, as a father of 6, and I've got 4 girls, it is that abhorrent I would do prison time. I've said it before. I make no apology. Yeah. I make no apology for that.
Me too. I've got 2 girls, and if that would happen to my girls, I'd be in for life now. That's as simple as that.
And people can sack me from this job. What I don't understand is this, and why I think it could be higher. And that sounds a terrible thing to say, right, Adam? But any conviction politician, however difficult, would stand on the altar of truth and say, I don't care if I go down in flames and lose everything. I am going to tell you the truth. And I agree with you 100%. One of the reasons that, and of course, the lefties don't like him, one of the reasons Donald Trump got elected in America is because despite assassination attempts, despite criminal convictions, despite all sorts of things being thrown at him, many might have been right, I don't know. This man is focused entirely on doing what he thinks is righting the wrongs of America. Somebody in this country needs to say that if it's acceptable for young girls to be groomed and raped and men to get away because the system doesn't have an answer or they might come from a different country or whatever it is, I don't know, that is an absolute stain on our society. Fact.
Jezza, we have to thank Donald Trump for appointing Elon Musk, because without him now, what would we be talking about? We wouldn't be talking about this right now and being so angry. Everybody's going, oh, I was talking about this, there's such and such. Nobody would be talking about it. It would be brushed under the carpet, the can kicked down the road. It will never be addressed. But now Elon Musk has got the power and the money to put it out there, number one.
I read something this morning.
Scurrying like little rats they are.
I read something this morning. Ed Davey, the Liberal Democrat leader, he tweeted, people have had enough of Elon Musk interfering with our country's democracy when he clearly knows nothing at all about Britain. It's about time the Prime Minister summoned the US ambassador to ask why an incoming US unelected official is suggesting the UK government should be overthrown, to which Elon Musk put, what exactly do I fail to understand about your complete failure to stop the mass rape of little girls in Britain, you snivelling cretin? I mean, with the greatest respect to all sorts of people, he's absolutely bloody right there, isn't he? Spot on right.
Here's the thing. If an alien landed and you told him about what's gone on in this country, he would do exactly the same as Elon Musk, right? He'll go, are you insane? You crazy? And what, you allow these people come in your country? You don't, and even if you do, you catch them, you put them in prison, and you let them back in the community when they could be kicked out of the country. What?
Adam, I am beyond with you, my friend. I have to move on, but it's great to have you on. Adam from Ramsbottom. We have some sad breaking news, which I'd like to put directly to the recently ennobled Sir Sadiq Khan, a 14-year-old boy. Has been stabbed to death this afternoon on a bus in Woolwich, South London. The Met Police have just reported. We are telling you this exclusively. A 14-year-old boy stabbed to death on a bus in Woolwich, South East London. Sadiq Khan, you concentrate on everything woke. You've done nothing whatsoever for knife crime in this city. Sort it. Our thoughts are with that young man's family. Let's go to Leeds. Steve, you're on talk. What you got, pal?
Well, I was listening to you about Sir Keir Starmer and why he won't investigate this and have an inquiry, and why previous governments did the same. I remember the trial of the guys in Rochdale, and 2 things struck me. The first one was they asked if it could be classed as a hate crime, and then I increased the sentences, and they said no, when clearly it is if it's Muslim men and white girls. But the second thing was no investigation was ever made by the police into the men that paid to rape these children. These girls were taken to private homes. They weren't put on the street, private homes, to private parties organised by these gangs where men from certain communities came and repeatedly raped these children. Not a single one of these gangs has ever seen an investigation into who the men were that paid to rape these girls. Now, I'll tell you the reason why. If it did, you would have thousands of men from certain communities being arrested overnight by the police, and the disruption and social unrest that would cause would be enormous. And I think that's why they're afraid of going any further with this investigation.
My problem is, and you will understand, I don't, please don't take this the wrong way, I don't fear anymore saying something. I don't say things just to create reaction. I say things that I believe, and I'm sure there are many stations and news networks that don't allow or even encourage their presenters to have that. They don't hear at Talk. The people that broadcast on Talk have the intelligence, I hope, and the ability to be able to speak their minds. I'll say this. I think it's an absolute, I've said it already, stain on our society, stain on everything that I consider moral, ethical, right? I cannot understand why we're arguing about who said what said. This is abhorrent. I think these people should be hunted down, and I don't give a damn if it's the highest in the land or anybody. This is repugnant. These are innocent children. And if you're now going to tell me that I live in a country whereby the law is only applied in certain situations for fear of unrest, whether it's the far right, whether it's a Muslim section, whether it's whatever it is, right? That's not a society that in my mind is right, because if you break the law, irrespective of who you are, where you come from, you should suffer the consequences. Thank you to Stephen Leeds. So many people trying to get on today. The voice has gone a bit croaky. I'm getting emotional. 25 to 5, 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. This is Talk Drive.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
He says, clearing his throat, 22 minutes to 5 o'clock. I was listening to the incredible Mike Graham this morning, who does quite simply the best breakfast show in the land, Morning Glory on, Monday to Friday from 6 until 10. And this is a story that, for me sums up the work that Talk do. Ricky does a fantastic job for us in terms of editing so much information. Provided Mike and the team with an exclusive today about a jazz teacher. I don't know if you heard this. A veteran jazz teacher has been cancelled by a prestigious music school in London after claiming there is no systematic racial inequality at Trinity, which is where he plays, in the UK jazz scene. Martin Speake, an academic and saxophonist for over 50 years, my friends, alleges to have been forced to resign after he provided feedback questioning his place's inclusivity and diversity approach. They responded by saying, "You're an outrage. The students didn't want to be taught by him, that the fellow lecturers and teachers didn't want to speak to him." We're delighted to be joined in tick by Bryn Harris, Chief Legal Counsel of the Free Speech Union, who are providing help to Martin Speake because of the position he finds himself in. But just have a watch and a listen to him with Mike Graham this morning to give you some idea of how appalling this story is.
I shared it with one student, an interesting student who we always chatted about all kinds of things, and I thought that's what you're supposed to do in the academic world with young adults, talk about interesting subjects. You don't have to agree. And he shared it with half a dozen students, and one of those got anxious. I don't like what Martin's saying here, and went into the head of jazz, who was a friend of mine for 30 years, interestingly, and instead of calling me in, let's all talk about it, bypassed me, and the wheels of motion were set. And the students then heard about the email, although I hadn't seen it, and decided to boycott my lessons.
It's absolutely unbelievable. Bryn Harris, Chief Legal Counsel of the Free Speech Union. Welcome to Talk Drive. You are providing Martin Speak with help in yet another example of how this country is going mad. So we live in a world, in a country where you're supposed to have free speech, but if you have an opinion on something that doesn't seem to fit the bedwetting woke idiots that seemingly are taking control of the madhouse, you get cancelled, my friend.
Hi, Jeremy. Yeah, this is a very sad case, a disappointing case, and I'm sad to say it's not a rare case. As you said, Martin spent 50 years in jazz in a diverse, multicultural area of music, and this is a man who believes passionately in good race relations. He believes passionately in equality, no matter what your skin color is. That's what he was saying in his email to the college's principal. You know, the principal had emailed saying, you know, that there's systematic inequality, you know, we're not being fair to black students. And Martin's position was, look, this is too divisive. You know, I work in jazz, is what he said. You know, people get on. Let's not try and convince ourselves that we're constantly, you know, in this terrible race war. And it was an entirely fair thing to say, something that I think most people in this country would believe. And then, of course, it gets terribly out of hand. And I think the real crux of Martin's case is that at some point the college decides what we're going to do is we need to show the entire college, or the entire jazz department at least, what he's been saying. Clearly a cynical move. We think that was just hanging him out to dry, because they must have known that this would whip up essentially a mob. You know,
well, I was about to say, actually, Bryn, and I'm really pleased you used that word, because we're getting to a point of mob rule, are we not, in educational circles, in government circles, in life in general, where unless you say what the status quo is, however barking mad the status quo is, then you can, as I said, be cancelled, be ostracised, be banished. And in Martin's case, a 50-year career, trashed, and probably, you know, a man who we've picked up and we've done this story because I think it's a very important story. But if there wasn't this platform, what would he do? He'd have nowhere to speak out because he's been labelled and that's it, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, you know, all that he can do in the situation is to fight for his legal rights. That's what we're trying to help him do. That costs money. Most people can't afford it. Martin has a crowdfunder. I hope people will go and look for it, because he does need your help. I think really what this comes down to is that, you know, colleges are there to educate. That's what they're meant to be doing. But they can't do that if they live in fear of telling their students things they don't want to hear. They for some reason they felt they couldn't take the step of educating their students and say, look, he may think differently to you, but you must hear him out.
I mean, my point in my 60th year is that we went to university to, I'm being completely serious, get a degree, have a good time, and broaden our minds in all sorts of ways. There was no preconceived idea about what you'd think about banning the bomb, or I don't know. God, it was a long time ago. It seems to me, and I'm probably sounding very old, that students go to universities and colleges now and there's already a set view that organisation should have, and you can get a T-shirt and join the march or burn your bra or whatever. I suppose that's the wrong thing to say. Is it bra? Can you say that? I don't know. To the point where you can't express your opinion. And I think that is a frustration that the older generation, or anybody who's bloody sane, let's be perfectly honest, is going to increasingly feel. And I don't know about you. You're the Chief Legal Counsel of the Free Speech Union. But this will turn in the most catastrophic way, because this can't continue, can it?
No. Look, I think you're absolutely right. People can't express their views at universities in many cases. I'm not even sure they're having a good time. I certainly look at disputes like this and I just see a lot of anger and misery. I don't see anyone having a good time. It's uncivilized, it's vicious, and it's absolutely unfair. Clearly, these colleges need to stop pandering to the worst instincts. I think that's what's happening. This instinct to hound, to punish, to ostracize the outsider And instead of what I think most people in this situation would do, would be to take a step back, to take a breath, to pause, to say, let's not let this get out of hand. That's the sort of critical interlude that's not happening.
But it's very interesting in terms of you being the Free Speech Union, because all of these students, and my daughter hates me saying this, and a lot of the younger generation, they believe they say in free speech, but that's only when you say what they believe or they're allowed to say. The rest of it's BS, and you represent this, Dad, and this should be cancelled and this should be trashed and your views are outrageous. But my opinion at 60, is if you're entitled to your opinion, I'm bloody well entitled to mine. And the point of a democracy and free speech is that you might spend an entire lifetime stood in front of somebody who's you would disagree with from the beginning to the end of your life. But you talk, you listen, that's what you do. That's debate, that's argument, that's free speech, that's democracy, right?
Absolutely. I think it's important to note universities do have free speech.
Yeah.
As long as you have the right opinions. Now, if you have the right opinions, you can be as vociferous and as controversial, as you like in expressing them. So it's not like the principle isn't understood. It is. But there's this really quite perverse identification of, who is allowed to speak, who is in the right, who is the elect, those with the correct views. I think we need to reduce it to the human level. This is destroying careers and lives.
Completely agree. Listen, Bryn, would love to speak all afternoon, but a good friend of the station and lovely to have you on. Bryn Harris, Chief Legal Counsel of the Free Speech Union. To the phone lines very quickly. Oxford. Chris, good afternoon.
Oh, good afternoon. I really, now that I'm on air with you, I heard the last speaker, and basically that's what I wanted to say. I thought students who went to university were there to discuss these things, not just walk out when someone said something they didn't agree with. Surely to God, this is what we want from our students who go to university, that they digest what has been said and then they make up an argument or find the facts to disagree with it. I don't feel so sorry for this poor man. He's doing what we've always wanted to do, discuss things with the younger generation to help them to make up their minds with knowledge, not just decide we don't like this idea and then walk out. And I feel dreadful that the college, the people who run the college have decided to dismiss this man when he's obviously a brilliant teacher just because he doesn't agree with them.
I'm so sorry, Chris, but I'm completely shocked by your call. How old are you?
I'm 77.
How unfair to think that these poor students, these entitled, lazy little... But honestly, I'm so with you. I am so happy I am not young. I'm glad I'm not young anymore. I can sit here and confidently say to you and other people that this is just... I want to swear. Begins in B and ends in S. It's just not going to work in the long run. A democracy, as I said, is based on different opinions. And for me... your life lesson should be that you learn all of the different views. But you're right. When it ruins somebody's career of 50 years, when it trashes somebody's reputation, that is appalling. Chris in Oxford, we're really grateful. Thanks for tuning in to talk. We really appreciate it. What is it, 12 minutes to 5? This is Drive.
Kemi Badenoch so far has been a disaster. Kemi, if you're watching, stop saying what you're going to do. You've been in the job a couple of months. You haven't done anything. Do something. Stop saying you're going to... You wait. We're really going to take Labour on. You wait. No, we don't want to wait. Get on with it.
It's all platitudes and headlines, isn't it? You know, I had this debate when I was hosting a week or two ago, and I said to Peter Barnes, I think, look, we need to see Kemi Badenoch's mettle. We need to know what she actually stands for.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Back 10 to 5, we're live across the UK. This is Talk Drive. Apparently all my children, or most of them, are listening. Alice, Ava, Iris, Oliver. So that's missing too. Loads of them. I don't quite... How are you supposed to say hi to your kids when you're talking about dreadful stories? But anyway, there we go. 0344 419 1000. The other big story of the day is that Robert Jenrick, we've talked about the grooming gangs, Robert Jenrick, the shadow justice section, the man who lost out to Kemi Badenoch in the leadership of the Tory party, stood up and used some very choice words today and said that the Tories, when or if re-elected, could seek to limit immigration to the UK from what he described as alien cultures. The Shadow Justice Secretary said this morning that we have seen millions of people enter this country in recent years, and some of them have backward, frankly, medieval attitudes to women, and he stood by his claim that the grooming gang scandal started with the onset of mass immigration. We're delighted to welcome former MEP and migration expert Stephen Wolfe. A very happy New Year to you, Steve.
A very happy New Year. If only we could say it was, really, but if for families, yes, but for some families, certainly not, and this is the case what we're covering now.
Jenrick will be slaughtered by the bedwetters for the language that he used. I wanted to... I'm sure you weren't, because you were probably out buying that very impressive jumper yesterday, but Peter Blexley was on the show. And what he said, I thought resonated, and he chose his words very well, and I probably won't do him justice. But he basically said that Britain is based on many good things. Charitable works, people with humanity and morality, and we've always looked out for people who are worse off and tried to do our bit across the world. Now, that should never change. But alongside that, there are now factually people coming to this country who are taking advantage of stretched resources, who are coming here because apparently they don't like the culture, the background from whence they came, and then they spend most of the time trying to trash what has been here for many hundreds of years and implement things that aren't popular. And I think the basis of what Peter said yesterday, which resonated with many people, was we're very happy to have people that can give something to our country. Don't take the PISS out of us. Work with us, be part of us, and that's the way of a civilised society. But that isn't happening. It's not harmonious, is it? It's a problem for millions of people.
Yes, and unfortunately, Robert Jenrick is correct, and those statements are accurate. And much of what happened and the changes that we see today, the cultural issues where people wish to pull down statues, where we have large gangs, as we know from Albania, according to the police, who now control marijuana, cocaine, sex trafficking, and of course the high-end car stealing, where we see people, and what we've talked about over the past few weeks, the recognised grooming gangs that looked at young girls in a disgraceful way because they were white. All of them and all of those attitudes have occurred since the mass migration that were introduced, first by Tony Blair, accelerated by Gordon Brown, and then exacerbated under the Cameron and Boris Johnson leaderships. That is where the problem has come. And if we look back very carefully to the immigration that we saw after the Second World War, the Windrush, those who came from Uganda, the Irish communities that have been settled here for over a couple of 100 years, all of them settled peacefully into the way that Britain was and the cultures that we had. Yes, of course, we saw discrimination towards them. And yes, of course, there were those within their own communities that weren't happy with where they lived and used choice words and languages, but they were in the minority. Today, we see something totally different. It's an us against them, and the language that we're hearing, the divisive language, white privilege. If you're white, you shouldn't get a job instead of someone who should be getting it because of their diversity, equality, and inclusion rights. This is not the nature of Britain as we knew it. This is not the nature of Britain as we accepted it after the Second World War with our open hands. This is the nature of politics today and culture today that is trashing our history and our past when they're supposedly saying they've left awful places and want to stay in a nice place.
I think that's right, and I don't know if you heard, as usual, we haven't got that much time, but it's the story of the jazz teacher in the London College, this guy who for 50 years has lectured and played, and there was a questionnaire went round. I just did the story, Trinity in London, and he dared to send an email to the principal saying there isn't racism, there is equality, everybody gets involved, and it was leaked, and students refused to be taught by him, and the staff spurned him, and he's been trashed, and he's having to take legal advice from the Free Speech Union. I've always believed that we need to be open and honest about the things that are wrong. The problem is, when Robert Jenrick talks about alien cultures with medieval attitudes, the left wing jump up and down and say, you're all racist, this is outrageous. There isn't a racist bone in my body. Genuinely, hand on heart. What I will absolutely categorically say is, I want all people to give something back to their society. I am embarrassed at nearly 60 to live in a land right now under a government that thinks it's all right to freeze pensioners to death and now take away their prescriptions when they're over 60, when they've worked all their damn lives. I'm embarrassed to be in a country whereby we seemingly favour other people who have done nothing, whether they've come from another country or not, over people who have worked all their lives. And I think the cost of living crisis and how difficult it is for people has exacerbated this look at migration. And there will be some people who say it's not just migrants. No, it isn't just, but it's part of the issue. We are stretched and we are putting our own citizens at the back of the queue. And that, Stephen's not a good look, not for anybody.
No, it's not a good look. And what's happening now is across the globe, they're beginning to see it. And yes, people are saying, OK, this is a battle between Elon Musk, one of the wealthiest men in the world, and one of the most powerful in Keir Starmer. But the very idea that we've not had a proper investigation, and I've read both the reports by Lady J, and I don't agree that they actually do cover the main issue, which is why so many people ignored, for example, those young girls when they made those claims. But that is just another example to add to those that you've just mentioned about the way that we treat our pensioners, the way that we've treated our armed services, the way that we've treated people who've saved and contributed to this country, and the way that we ignore the mass economic and financial costs of large-scale migration. I've been on the show many times. I mean, I looked at last year alone, £1 billion has now been raised, if you want to put that, or earned in another way, by the people smugglers who have put over 151,000 illegal migrants into this country so that they can claim asylum. It costs us £8 billion a year. That's more than the amount of money that we're taking off those pensioners for heating.
Listen, Stephen, you know me, mate. I could talk to you for absolutely ever. We really appreciate you being on. Very much appreciate it. Thank you. Stephen Wolfe, migration expert, former MEP. Always welcome on Talk. What is it? That's a quick first hour. If you want to be on in the next hour, we'll kick off with Sir John Redwood. Free of being an MP, the man's turned into a brilliant. He's amazing. 0344 419 1000. Telephone number. Text 87222. Start your message with the word Talk, and the news at 5 o'clock is next, my friends.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back. 3 minutes past 5. Drive on Talk, the home of free speech and common sense. JK at the controls till 7 o'clock. Thank you so much indeed for tuning in. You can be part of the debate as ever. 0344 499 1000. You can text me 87222. Start your message with the word Talk. The two big news stories of the day, of course, this grooming gang scandal gathers pace. Many people, myself included, calling for a public inquiry. Let me just say this. Starmer says that these are the rantings of far-right activists and is becoming a bandwagon. I disagree fervently with that, right? I think as a society, we have a moral responsibility for the safety of our children. But this isn't just on Keir Starmer. It's wrong to criticise just Jess Phillips. This goes back decades. I'm not into conspiracy theories, whatever anybody says about me, but I sort of cannot get my head round the fact that nobody has done anything about what is a national disgrace for years. Why? Does it go higher? Is there more to this story? So many of you wanting to comment on that. We're going to go to Bradford, one of the areas that's been accused of having this problem. Stephen, you're on Talk Drive. A very good afternoon. What you got?
Oh, well, obviously, after listening to Robbie Moore, the MP for Keighley, it sort of highlights everything that I see, my family sees, that goes on in Bradford. I mean, I lived and worked in Bradford all my life. I own a business in Bradford, and daily, and I can say it, and I know it's true, daily, I drive through Bradford and I see very young girls in cars with South Asian men that you can only, draw your own conclusion about what happens, and within Bradford. I mean, as I was saying to you, who answered the call, I live in Bradford West. Bradford West is predominantly South Asian, Pakistani, Muslim area. I live in a village on the edge of it, and our MP, Naz Shah, as we all know, and we'll all go back to the Twitter post that she liked a few years ago, basically saying that, these young white girls should shut up for the sake of diversity. This cannot be ignored anymore. It just cannot be ignored anymore. I mean, just before Christmas, Bradford Council, another example, just before Christmas, Bradford Council, Conservative councillor Falak Ahmed, she was talking on the issue of grooming carried out by men who share her Pakistani heritage. She was shouted down in the council chambers to shut up.
I don't understand. For me, and I'm really pleased that you rang from Bradford. It's not the only town. There are many others. This is what I don't understand, and I'll keep saying this till the voice gives up. How do we as a civilised society think this is acceptable? How have several governments over many years turned a blind eye? This is an utter disgrace. Stephen, thank you for your call. Very quickly to London. Peter, you're on Talk Drive. 2 minutes only. What you got?
Hello, Jeremy. Yes. Yeah. I want to know. I absolutely an inquiry, but the witnesses, the girls, they've got to come up. They've got to testify themselves, haven't they? Plus, also,
well, let's just put into context the fear that these victims, the impact mentally on these victims for the rest of their lives. That's what I find so abhorrent, is that nobody seems to be considering the impact on these innocent children. What did I read? Somebody said there's an email that says they've made informed choices. What a load of... Oh, do you want to push the button? Because I'm going to say something in it. That's just deranged.
Go on.
That's deranged. Yeah. That is... Anybody who says that should be... I can't have it, mate. They're kids.
Exactly. My other point, Jeremy, is why isn't the NSPCC speaking out? You've got Maggie Oliver, who's got her own charity. She's doing her bit.
What an amazing lady Maggie Oliver is.
Yeah, but where is the NSPCC? I've written to them, but I've got nothing.
There's the surprise.
What's the matter with these people, Jeremy?
Completely agree with you, mate. Thank you for making it talk. Peter in London, 0344 499 1000 for 30, I'm going to guess 7 years. I could be wrong. This man was an MP, a Conservative MP, then he threw off the shackles, did panto at Christmas. No, I'm joking. Sir John Redwood, welcome to Talk Drive. Happy New Year, sir. How are you?
Happy New Year, good afternoon. Well, it's a pity we meet to talk about such depressing news, because you're right. This is a disastrous scandal, and it's been hidden for too long.
Right, let me jump on that. Let me jump on that word. You were an MP for many, many years. It's very easy and quite right to jump, and I'll continue to jump at Sir Keir Starmer. I think he's a ghastly human being who needs ousting very quickly before this country falls. But, Sir John Redwood, for many years, reports were carried out, the things that were found were not implemented. Your government, 14 years. Can somebody explain to me why in the pit of my stomach I have a feeling that this is being covered up, goes much higher and much deeper, and this is a systematic national disgrace waiting to blow up in their faces? That's how I feel about it. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think many of us have only just realised the scale and the full horrors of all this, because there wasn't enough out in the public domain. And if you weren't an MP specialising in this area, you didn't do enough. And it was all part of the tragedy that there wasn't a spotlight thrown on this. And people weren't aghast in the way it should have been. But we do know quite a lot of people in senior positions in successive governments and in councils and in social service departments, people paid a lot of money to safeguard young girls, for example, were aware of this. They must have known the scale, certainly in their own town, and some of them with their wider duties nationally, and they didn't do enough. And I think the public is absolutely scandalised now this is at last all coming out, just as they were scandalised when a TV show blew the whistle on the dreadful treatment of post office staff. But this is even worse, because this is wrecking the lives of young girls. It's using force against them. It's often rape. I hear there are drugs involved, which could ruin their life for much longer, treating them appallingly. And not enough adults in the community that knew this was going on blew the whistle and said to the accountable authorities, you've got to change your attitude, you've got to do something. That's why we need this immediate inquiry, and why we need far more openness from all those who did have this information crossing their desks.
I find it abhorrent. I think it's a disgraceful stain on us as a society. I've said repeatedly, Sir John, that presumably any a civilised society looks after first and foremost two groups, the young and the old. It's easy to criticise Starmer about the winter fuel allowance and yesterday's news that he wants to cancel prescriptions for over 6 years, but this has been going on forever. I'm going to share a story with you, which Ryan will probably headbutt the desk, but I can do this because it was me talking to my old man many years ago, and he worked for the royal family for 41 years. There was a well-publicised scandal that took part on the Royal Yacht Britannia in the 90s, a sexual scandal between several sailors. That's all I'm going to say, right? Fact. And I remember talking to him about this, and he said to me that in the process of several of these sailors, particularly one being brought to task, he said, and I quote, if I go down, several people that you wouldn't be able... I'm not even going to say, but I mean, he implied lords, MPs, royalty, actors, bishops, famous... He said they'll go down as well, and it was not... It was covered. And so I sat here this afternoon and over the last 2 days hearing this story about the grooming gangs, and all I can think to myself is, if this does go deeper, this is a disgrace and absolutely needs to be shredded and found out to be the truth for these victims, Sir John, surely.
Yes, it's horrific, and none of these cases passed my desk in my constituency. I hope if they had, I would have taken them up immediately. I did with post mistresses and masters, and from very early days say this is wrong, and was one of the few voices trying to get redress and a change of approach. That's what MPs are meant to do. But the bigger question is about people in government, both senior officials and some ministers, and certainly the people on big salaries heading social service departments in councils, because we are paying millions to these people to help us safeguard young people and to look after the elderly. And this is such a colossal failure. It is, as you say,
Can you imagine if we looked at another Can you imagine if we looked at another country and heard this? We'd say that was barbaric. We'd call this. We'd call it every name under the sun. This would be deemed quite rightly as abhorrent in terms of how we see ourselves. This has happened in the United Kingdom, for God's sake.
Well, this is no decent human being can defend this conduct by these older males. And all those of us who are fathers or have relatives, young female relatives, we're absolutely scandalised by this. We cannot believe the mentality that would do this to young girls.
Where do you stand on the feeling? I say the feeling, the words that have come out that certainly taking Rotherham aside, the police made it. I mean, it took 8 years to bring certain people to justice, and out came the information that the police were worried if they'd done it quicker, that this would have caused cultural division. I mean, where I come from, if you break the law, it doesn't matter where you come from or the colour of your skin. If you break the law, you should actually be, you should be reprimanded and you should be sentenced and you should serve your time for the crime. But, Sir John, we're now at a point where even the police are saying it might be dangerous to do something about that because it might upset some people. What does that say?
Well, I think that's why we need a proper inquiry to get to the bottom of this, because I've also seen rumours flying around that senior politicians were urging the police not to take action, and that would also be very relevant to the whole situation. But I'm with you. We all live under the law. An MP lives under the rule of law. The one privilege the MP has is to change the law for the future, but they can't change the law for the past. They and we are all living under the same law. And the law must be completely colour-blind and race-blind and religion-blind. There are only two categories of people. There are criminals and there are innocent people.
Yeah.
And it's the job of the law enforcement to distinguish the one from the other.
Just the other main news story of the day. Delighted to get your take on this, and thank you as ever for joining us. Robert Jenrick, who of course lost the leadership battle to Kemi Badenoch, who's backed his comments, by the way, this evening, this morning suggested the Tories, if they ever get back to power, could seek to limit immigration to the UK from what he describes, Sir John, as alien cultures. The Shadow Justice Secretary said this morning that we have seen millions of people enter the UK in recent years, and some of them have backward, frankly, medieval attitudes to women. And he stood by his claim that the grooming gang scandal, to bring it back to what we were talking about, started with the onset of mass migration. What's your thought on that?
Well, I wouldn't have put it the way he's put it. I understand what he's saying, and I understand why Kemi has backed him. But the way I would put it is that the country as a whole, with a few left-wing exceptions, are very, very angry about the scale of migration generally.
Yeah.
Because you can't even offer something decent to the people coming in, and it has obvious pressures on the people already living here, that there aren't enough homes, there aren't enough surgery places, that there aren't enough good school places and so forth. So we've got to limit it in a big way, legal migration as well as illegal. I think we're all sick and tired of illegal migration, and we wish the government did have a way to smash the gangs in the way that they promised. And there needs to be some getting together of the main political forces in Parliament to find a series of approaches that does work, because the cost and the outrage is unacceptable. And obviously, if some of those people then become criminals, the minority may well do, that is completely unacceptable, because they're already a criminal with criminal entry. And then if they start disrupting the existing community that they are put into, that is totally unacceptable. And what we then need to do is police in a neutral and firm way, in the way that you and I have just agreed.
Do you think that Jenrick has a point, though? I mean, I get what he's saying, but I agree with you, actually. Maybe the words, alien cultures is going to kick off the left wing. But the truth of the matter is, and I said it earlier, and I'd love to put this to you, I sort of think this country has been based on many great things, morality and humanity and helping others who need it. But we have turned, in my opinion, into a nation that I'm afraid is soft, that seems to put many of its own deserving people at the back of a queue in our I don't know, in our quest to be seen to be. I don't understand it. And I think what he was probably trying to say in really bad words is charity begins at home, and if you are going to come to this country, you need to give something to this country rather than spend your entire time bashing this country, trying to destroy everything that you apparently were interested in coming and endorsing, and now you're trying to slag it off and change it. Would that make sense? I think that's probably layman's terms.
Part of what he was trying to cover in what he said, but I think there are quite a lot of people who were born here that slang off our country.
Yeah, that's true.
For reasons which are equally irritating. I mean, what I would say is that I don't regard someone who has a different religion from me as an alien culture.
No.
But I do want them to agree with me that we live in a tolerant society where they can go to their mosque or church, I could go to my mosque and church, and we live happily together, and we don't expect the others to fall in line with our views. We are tolerant on religion. We had wars over that many years ago, and I think rightly settled it in favour of toleration. So if this is going to work with people coming in, there's got to be general tolerance and general acceptance by the people coming in that some of the great things about this country are free speech, toleration of different religions.
Absolutely.
And different dress styles, but you don't go around bossing people if they've got it wrong in your view.
Final moment for you, and I bet you're glad you're not in Parliament anymore. Elon Musk, talk to me. Elon Musk...
Yes, well, he's stirring it all up, isn't he?
Well, I must say, I did like the quote. Did you see the quote today to Ed Davey? Did you see that one?
No, I haven't seen
I
that
mean,
one.
he obviously said Farage was a disgrace, and Farage, isn't good enough. He said, Ed Davey said, people have had enough of Elon Musk interfering with our country's democracy when he clearly knows nothing about Great Britain. It's time to summon the US ambassador to ask why an incoming US unelected official is suggesting the UK government should be overthrown. Elon Musk, what exactly do I fail to understand about your failure to stop the mass rape of little girls in Britain, you snivelling, uneducated cretin? Which actually is quite a fine response from Elon Musk. What's your take on this?
Well, I think it shows that Elon Musk certainly doesn't mince his words and has an eye for something that every news channel is going to pick up and talk about a great deal, because he's obviously very keen to build even further his social media empire and to assert the power of X. But I think President Trump has an issue to sort out, because if he is going to become a valued advisor within the administration and have maybe the chairmanship of an important advisory committee, or in his view, even a government department, then I think they have got to play by a few of the international rules, because they are upsetting an awful lot of allies and potentially friendly governments. And I see the EU, in its usual way, is now thinking of taking him to court, because they always reach for lawyers when there's something they don't like.
The EU spending more money, he's definitely meddling. I can't work out whether he's just barking mad or he's I don't know what he is. Just quickly.
Well, I think he's a great publicist who's on a high, because suddenly the whole world is talking about what he says and is listening to him. But if he wants to be a genuine help to President Trump, he has to understand some of the old rules about diplomacy and not interfering in other people's politics make some sense.
Well, this is breaking news, by the way. The billionaire's father has literally, in the last few minutes, revealed that Elon Musk wants to buy Liverpool Football Club. So I've absolutely no idea.
Wow.
He'll be able to afford that. He's made so much money. Can I ask you a question as an MP, a Tory MP for many, many years? I would never ask how old you are, but as I enter my 60th year, I'm beginning to worry about our country, my friend. I'm beginning to worry about the things that I hold dear and believe in. Do you think we're at a crossroads in many ways?
Well, I think we're going downhill in many respects, and I'm proud of our country and its history and many of its achievements, and I want us to have a government that is positive about what we have achieved in the past, but more importantly, creates the circumstances in which we can do so much more of it in the future. And I think we do need to control numbers, to take some of the pressures off housing and public services. I think we do need a bit of a revolution in the way we run the public services, because we're getting less out and putting more money in and not achieving the high levels that we want. The senior management doesn't seem to be able to get a grip on it. And above all, we need that strategy for growth, because we want to be better off. I want people to be better paid, but the rub is you have to earn the better pay. And so we've got to get smarter at the way we do things and have a wider range of goods and services which we supply, instead of having this extreme net zero madness shutting down much of our industry, stopping us using our own oil and gas, and still landing us with more CO2 to make it even more ludicrous.
Could not agree with you more. And you know my stated ambition with you, Sir John Redwood. How many years were you an MP?
37 years.
I will have you in Panto if it's the last thing I do. Sir John Redwood, thank you very much indeed for being on Talk Drive. The shackles are off. He's great, isn't he? 5:21 if you want to be on. 0344 499 1000, text to 87222. So that breaking news, Elon Musk's father has just announced that Elon apparently wants to buy Liverpool Football Club. Is he barking? He's just so rich, honestly. And everybody's concerned. The thing is, when he slags everybody off, they get really wound up, don't they? 0344 499 1000, this is Talk Drive.
Kemi Badenoch so far has been a disaster. Kemi, if you're watching, stop saying what you're going to do. You've been in the job a couple of months. You haven't done anything. Do something. Stop saying you're going to... You wait. We're really going to take Labour on. You wait. No, we don't want to wait. Get on with it.
It's all platitudes and headlines, isn't it? You know, I had this debate when I was hosting a week or two ago, and I said to Peter Barnes, I think, look, we need to see Kemi Badenoch's mettle. We need to know what she actually stands for.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
5:25, we're live across the United Kingdom. This is Jeremy Kyle on Drive, and we're joined now by possibly one of the greatest broadcasting talents in the land. It says here, please can you big me up as much as possible? I want a new gig. Russell Quirk, good evening.
And I stapled money yet again to your sheet there, so hopefully...
I beg your pardon?
I stapled some money to the sheet there. As
I love the way you said the sheet. I've had the sheet. I'm still sounding a bit croaky. But
you are. Apparently you were ill over Christmas.
Any sympathy at all?
Well, not really. I mean, we all had a little sniffle, didn't we? But
no.
You had it worse than most, did you?
Of course I did it.
Proper man flu.
No, it wasn't.
Man flu is actually a thing, you know that. Men do get it worse than women.
No, mate, I'm going to say something now which is going to result in Ryan going and just becoming just all about yourself. I've had chemo and this flu was worse. Hand on bleeding heart. Right, James Well, bless him, had it. All sorts of people have had it, right? But it was awful. Isabel Oakeshott still with it. I mean, terrible. Apparently, I might have given it to her by kissing her at a party on the Thursday, the 19th of December.
Well, don't take this the wrong way, but I'd like you to be ill more often, because then I can cover your shows.
Many people say that it's much better with you. And as I've got a very bad voice, I will let you do most of the talking.
OK, let's go.
I don't know where you want to start. There's only one place to start, isn't there? And being as calm as possible, because I know you've got daughters as well, and I like to try and... This grooming gang inquiry, right?
Rape gang.
I'm not going to sit here and make this all about Sir Keir Starmer, OK? Because this has been going on for decades. We can talk about when he was the Director of Public Prosecutions. We can talk about his ridiculous lashing out at the far-right bandwagon. Ludicrous. That's like the riots thing. You are just going to polarise. The truth is he's worried, no doubt, about the Muslim vote. But the truth of the matter is, as a society, Russell... It's a stain. But I'm sitting here listening to us having discussions about whether there should be a public inquiry where young girls have been raped and left for dead, mentally and physically, for the rest of their lives, and nothing has been done about it. And I believe, and then I'll shut up, this has to go higher. This has to be a massive scandal that they want to keep quiet.
The atrocities, though, it's not just the thousands and thousands of incidents, the thousands of criminal acts of rape by generally and largely Pakistani men on underage white girls. And let's be clear, these are girls under the age of 16. So this is not just rape.
It's not informed choice, is it?
It is also paedophilia. So we actually, and lots of people have said this, and I know we've responded to this as presenters on the station, they're not grooming gangs, they're child rape gangs. That is what they are. That is one part of the atrocity. I think what we're getting to now, though, is, and I hope we're not getting anaesthetised to the fact that this happened to thousands and thousands of girls, tens of thousands of times, and probably including thousands and thousands of men. But the biggest issue now, Jeremy, I think, is not just the atrocity of the acts themselves. The problem is the fact that we now know that there were cover-ups at multiple levels. So whether it be council officers, council leaders, senior police officers, local councillors, and now actually this does reach into the higher echelons of ministers, members of parliament, and so on. There's lots and lots of debate now and confusion almost about who said what to whom when. That is exactly why we need an inquiry. We need to get to the bottom of this to find out what happened to who and I guess why, but really importantly, how was this allowed to be covered up by the establishment? Why was it covered up? Was it to protect the Muslim vote? Or indeed, was it because there are certain members of political parties that were also involved in the raping of underage girls?
Well, this is really interesting. So did you hear what I said about the conversation with my old man who died 3 years ago? He worked for the royal family for 41 years. Did you hear? You were downstairs.
Definitely.
There was many years ago a scandal on the Royal Yacht Britannia that he used to be part of, on with the Queen Mother loads, right? And I'm not going to go into details, but several of the sailors were caught on the Queen's bed. I mean, the Queen Mother, it's a fact. And it goes with, I mean, he told me this. As one of the many were dragged into a court-martial, young sailor, he said, if I go down, you know, and I'm not going to be specific, but MPs, judges, a member of the royal family, actors, everybody will come with me, and nothing happened. And I've just watched this over the last 24 hours, and I cannot get away from thinking that this goes so much deeper, because on a basic moral level as a father, it's disgusting and abhorrent. Just something about it.
Goes further.
It's beyond that.
It goes further, it goes wider, it goes deeper. So who is being protected? I don't believe this is just for votes. I don't know. I think because they were in positions of power and authority. And there was clearly a collusion. So we now need to get to the bottom of that, to bring those people to task. We need to see people prosecuted, not just the rapists, some of whom have been brought to task, of course. Those foreign nationals that raped also to be deported. I was talking to Kevin on his show last night.
Can't do that apparently because they didn't commit the crime in their own, but they committed the crime
because they decide all of a sudden that even though they're Muslims, they decide to be Christian. They have a cross, a crucifix tattooed on their arm, and of course, by way of this ridiculous affiliation to the European Convention on Human Rights, liberal judges then say, oh, you can't send Mohammed back to Syria because he's now a Christian, or he's now identified as gay, or he's identified as trans. The swerves, the fakery, the trickery to try and stop these people successfully being deported. But the point is not just the criminality of the rape gangs, the perpetrators themselves. We need to see those councillors, those council leaders, those politicians, those senior police officers prosecuted and imprisoned.
Completely right.
It has to happen.
And it can't be. I mean, I'm pleased it's come out, although, I mean, look at the post office scandal. That was as a result of a television programme.
Yeah.
I find it... I sort of find it an embarrassment. That's the wrong word. You see, I can't even find the right words. For me, it's if somebody did that to one of my children, I'd be in prison, and I don't give a... Sorry, I nearly said the wrong word again, Brian. I don't care.
I think you're saying what every father thinks.
I would be eating prison food for the rest of my life. However, I'm embarrassed to be British. I mean, I said it earlier, and I'd love your take on this. If we looked at a country in any other part of the world and said, you know, there's systematic gang rape of young girls by people who come into the country, and by the way...
What would we say? We'd say they're
barbarians.
And uncivilised.
Yeah.
The other thing we need to do is to recognise and applaud people like Maggie Oliver. And I know we've talked about this, but I've got to make the point again. You know, Maggie Oliver should be Dame Maggie Oliver. Can we just swap the honour from Sadiq Khan and give it to Maggie Oliver? Because when it comes to the choice between those two people, who do we think is more worthy of an honour, Maggie Oliver or Sadiq Khan?
Ian from Walsall making the point. I broke this news earlier, horrific news earlier. A 14-year-old boy stabbed to death
on a
bus in Woolwich this afternoon. This is under the auspices of a man who got a knighthood in the New Year's honours list, Sir Sadiq Khan, who spends his time worrying about woke... But nearly said the wrong word again, right? I'm really going to have to get swear to you.
But you will, because it's emotive, Jeremy.
And yet that kid's been stabbed to death because he's done nothing about knife crime in this city, because he's too scared to stop and search, because he thinks there again he's going to be called a racist.
Yeah, hundreds and hundreds of knife crimes. 180 knife deaths, I think, last year in London. And we started off the new year with one already. It's only the 7th of January.
And do you know, he tweeted this morning, getting young children to cycle for the environment. And yet this afternoon, a 14-year-old child is stabbed to death on a bus.
And he'll say nothing.
In the very city over which he's the mayor, and he'll say nothing. The other big news story of the day... Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative leader, has backed Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary, who suggested this morning, and I've quite a strong view on this, alien cultures. The Tories, if they're re-elected, could seek to limit immigration to the UK from what he described as alien cultures. The Shadow Justice Secretary said, we've seen millions of people enter the UK in recent years, and some of them have backward, frankly, medieval attitudes to women. He stood by his claim that the grooming gang scandal started with the onset of mass migration.
Yep. How can he be wrong in what he's saying?
No, I didn't say he was wrong. Unfortunately, the lingo, probably alien cultures, doesn't do him any favours whatsoever.
No, it doesn't. And the left will jump on that as the language being inappropriate. But let's not talk about the language he used, which, yes, might have been ill-chosen.
The sentiment's correct.
The sentiment. Yeah, the sentiment is. So, we have people coming here, often illegally and anonymously, from other cultures. Are we recording this? Start again?
We should do it with my voice, yeah.
Okay, it's not live. No, we have people coming here, often anonymously, from other countries.
Well done,
Thank you very much. And they come from cultures who still believe that women shouldn't drive or operate machinery or go out on their own without a chaperone, or indeed should not be able to go out with their face uncovered. We have people here from societies that think that if they suspect a woman of committing adultery, that she should be stoned to death. So when Robert Jenrick talks about cultures that are alien, what he means is that they are different to us. They have their own way of...
Different probably would have been a better word.
Yeah, but they have their own way of doing things.
Sure.
And again, the big question is, how do we, if we accept the premise of controlled and limited immigration, which I do, I think immigration generally is a really good thing, right? It's built Britain, but it must be limited, it must be selective. But also, how do we get over the problem of cultural integration?
Because this country is on a precipice. There is. They tell me all the time. There is cultural. What's the word when everybody gets on together? What is that word?
Assimilation.
But there isn't. There isn't. And in fact, because of mass migration, Peter Blexley put it really well yesterday, and far more eruditely than you would ever have imagined that an old copper. And why did I do that? An old copper.
It was not pirate.
He was basically saying, I'm proud of this country. I'm proud of our history, our statues, our charitable work, our humility, how we helped and have always been a beacon for doing the right thing. But he said, as a result of that, that's now taken advantage of. And what alienates him, he said, and so many others, is that people who are escaping, in many instances, terrible places, but in many are just taking advantage of a soft system, come to this country, instead of embracing it and living it and being part of it, and all of us living happily together, spend their time trashing everything about the very country they've escaped to and trying to implement stuff that, with respect, is not wanted. And that, I thought he put that really, really well, because after the cost of living crisis, a lot of people who never moaned about migration are suddenly going, hold on a second, I'm at the back of the bloody queue and I've been here 50 years.
Yes, but he's right, but I think it goes even further than that. So since 1997, when Tony Blair decided to open the floodgates to immigration in this country, which successive governments, predominantly Conservative ones, have done nothing about. Yes, we have had that open-door policy and that problem of a lack of cultural integration. But what we've also seen, particularly in the last 5 or 6 years, is this woke approach to immigration and culture.
Absolutely.
Where, of course, now we can't talk about the perils of certain types of immigration. We can't talk about, for instance, the link between crime and immigration, or the fact that some immigration has a higher value than other elements of immigration. We can't talk about that, of course, because you've got the left-wing apologists that say, don't dare mention that. And this is where the whole grooming gang, child rape gang thing started. We are over-compensating, over-apologising for certain cultures that are here, because it's seen that if we don't overcompensate, it's racist.
Couldn't agree more. The boss has just texted me, keep him on to do the calls with you next. He's much better than you are. We're coming back in a minute on Talk Drive.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Right now, Mar-a-Lago, the President-elect Donald Trump, Russell, he started about an hour ago just talking about this court case and how he's going to be sentenced. We've now got on to big tariffs, he said, of Mexico. He does like to talk, doesn't he?
Well, he'd be a great talk show host, wouldn't he?
He would. I must say, oh, he's leaving now. I must say that one of the greatest things I've seen yesterday was, I don't know if you know this, but on the 6th of January, of course, 4 years ago, Mike Pence, the then Vice President, had to endorsed the victory of Joe Biden, and that's when all the Capitol Hill riots started. Yeah. Yesterday, did you see it? Kamala Harris had to endorse Donald Trump. Every one of the 50 states would get... The look on her face, mate, was absolutely brilliant.
Well, that's probably the last time we'll ever see her.
Absolutely. 0344 499 1000. Russell Quirk takes control of drive time as my voice starts to go. Bethany is in Preston. You're on Talk Drive, Bethany. Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello. You're through to Jeremy Kyle and Russell Quirk. What's happening?
I wanted to talk about the grooming gangs and the inquiry. I really feel there needs to be one. As I, at 14 years old, nearly got pulled into a car with 3 Pakistani Muslim males when I was out trying to go to my friend's house one evening due to some situation at home. I was out late at night on my own, and they were following me down the road, trying to entice me, calling me nice names. And then when I told them where to go because I wasn't getting in the car, they then threatened, saying that they were going to grab me and they were going to pull me into the car. Luckily, it was another car came the opposite way and they got a bit spooked, and then they drove off and left me. So I quickly got to where I needed to be, but because it was a quiet town, they could have had the chance to have grabbed me if they wanted to.
You were a youngster growing up near Rochdale. How old were you when that happened to you, Bethany?
About 13, 14.
How old are you now?
I'm 35, going on 36.
It's 20 years ago, Russ.
And yeah. Bethany, did you report this to the police at the time?
No, I didn't.
Why?
Because I was in shock, and with the situation at home, there was other stuff going on at home that was overshadowed that situation, that I just got to where I needed to be safe and carried on with the next day sort of thing. But I was aware of my surroundings, and like I say, my hometown was close to Rochdale.
And Bethany, do you think that, based on your experience, that the extent of what we're calling, or what the main media are calling, grooming gangs, but the child rape gangs, as obviously you very nearly encountered, do you think that the size of this problem is therefore much, much bigger because there's lots and lots of people like you that didn't want to act at the time for good reason, that didn't report it?
I think there is, yes, and I think it's a lot more towns than they're saying than just the 50.
I agree with that. Certainly yesterday on the show it became pretty apparent that there are a lot more than the Oldhams and the Rochdales and the Telfords and the Bradfords. But Bethany, just... I know I keep coming back to this, and I forgive the 7 people, please forgive me, the 7 people that listen. What does it say about our society? And I get, by the way, and I know Russell does as well, why you would be fearing to go forward. That whole, you might not be listened to and people at home would judge you. That's the worst thing about it, in my humble opinion, is that the person who's been the victim is left somehow feeling guilt-ridden or messed in the head. Do you not think as a society it's appalling that this has been seemingly swept under the carpet for years and years?
It does feel like it has been swept under the carpet, and I feel like we need to get it out in the open now, because at the end of the day there could be hundreds of thousands of children that are having this happen to them.
Why do you think that? I mean, we're not in a position to say it's only Muslim men or British Pakistani men or white men or whatever, but certainly the police made noises after the Rotherham situation, didn't they, Russ, where they said that it took 8 years because we were worried about cultural clashes, and that can be no way to police anything that important.
Well, the police have effectively confirmed that they didn't pursue these issues because they were worried about community tensions and so on.
What about these innocent girls? For God's sake, community tensions.
So, Bethany, what would you like to see happen to not just the perpetrators, but those that then colluded to cover this up and effectively enabled more rapes of young white girls under the age of 16, more statutory rape, as a consequence of the fact that this was covered up by councils and police officers. What would you like to happen to those individuals that colluded to cover this up?
I feel they need to be held accountable.
In what way, though, Bethany?
Whether that is a prison sentence or them losing their jobs and being struck off.
Because some of these people will still be in office, presumably, won't they?
Well, this is it. And are they still allowing it to be covered up?
I'm so with you, Bethany. We really, and I mean this, genuinely appreciate you sharing your story. Bethany in Preston, who says 20 years ago, as a 14-year-old nearly enticed into a car. That's her story. That's not racist. That's factual. 3 Muslim men late at night. She had problems at home. She didn't say anything. How many Bethanys are out? Let's go to Dorset very quickly. Rick, you're on Talk Drive. Russell's with me. What you got?
Hello, Jezza. Hello, Russell. And obviously I can't do this anonymously. And I wish, what I will say is that your producers or your researchers know my number, and you need to call me back sometime to finish all this off. And it's because it's, well, I can't say everything I need to say on your programme. Is that understood?
It is, but I don't know why you rang if you can't say what you can't say.
What I'm saying is, right, okay, I'm going to give you a little history lesson. Can I give you a little history lesson?
If you want, you've got 2 minutes.
Right, I've got 2 minutes, so unfortunately that other naive person didn't know what she was talking about. So, the problem is, everyone forgets they've got short memories. It all goes back to 1947, when we gave India back up, and good old Gandhi, that's it, he fought for independence, lovely. What he created was 20 million deaths, okay? All the Hindus go to the south, all the Muslims go to the north, partition, Pakistan. Stan means province. So Pakistan was created, and then obviously then Bangladesh after that. So back in those days, all the rag trade, okay, all the mills and everything else was from Birmingham upwards, all to the places that we've all been talking about for the last week. When the partition happened and when we gave it back, okay, we have open arms, not this 1997 with Blair and everything else. What the hell are you talking about? It goes back to 1947. Open, right. If you worked in the mills, if you worked in the cotton industry, fantastic. Right, from Nottingham, what do they call it, the silk market for and everything else? There's all those people lived over there, they all worked there. Bring your families over, no problem at all. What happened, it festered and festered and festered and festered because of the religion. Now, what I will tell you, okay, and everything I say I can back up evidentially, absolutely 100%. If you go, okay, to a Muslim country, right, Islamic country, and there's other people there, and you're not one of the Islamic people, or you do not follow Islam, and you're not a Muslim, they will partition you off into a certain area. In Saudi, you live in a compound. You go to work, they want your money, they want your technology, they want your know-how. Then you go back to your compounds, because we do not want your Western ways infiltrating into our Islamic ways. Now, the big difference is...
I'm going to have to stop you there, Rick, not because I'm being a pain in the backside, but because I'm being waved at. The one thing that I'm excited about on this show is that people will always be allowed their opinions. I wish I could have allowed him to give me a history lesson more. Those are his opinions, Russell, and that's important to him. What I would say is that whether it started in 1947, 97, 87, 77, or I could carry on with the sevens, couldn't I? I was born 77. The fact of the matter is we have created in this country a situation that was not spoken about for many years for fear of upsetting people. This country has many great things about it. I believe those are being undermined by many people who are coming here to trash a society they say they want to be part of. I want to make a point that you made that is really salient. There are many brilliant people who have come to the United Kingdom from other countries and brought rich success, intelligence, craft, creativity, and we should accept and acknowledge that, much like the Americans do with that. But there are increasing numbers of people who see us as a bleeding soft touch, and that's the issue, right?
The difference is, so what I was trying to explain that maybe Rick didn't pick up on is that 1997 was the watershed moment.
Absolutely.
Prior to that, there was controlled immigration. So we selected, we knew who was coming in. Yes, there was the Commonwealth element, but generally we knew who was coming in. Tony Blair's attitude platitude, and David Cameron's, and Theresa May's, and actually Boris Johnson's, and definitely Rishi Sunak's, and now Keir Starmer's is open the gates, let anybody and everybody in, because we believe that all immigration is good. I'm afraid it's not. Different immigration is different and has different values in terms of skills, economic imperative, and indeed cultural issues. So the difference was Blair, 1997, saying, come on in, the water's lovely, whoever you are. Now what we have are people coming here that are net takers, whereas previous to that we had people, like people from India and certain parts of Africa, that came as doctors, engineers and whatever, and contributed. That was the catalyst.
Completely agree. Russell Quirk, you're doing the next hour and 10 minutes. Thank you very much indeed. He's always on. He'll be back. Wait, are you on tomorrow, are you?
I'm doing stuff tomorrow, but I don't think I'm doing anything.
He's a very,
live.
very busy man. If you want to employ him, you need to get in soon, because he's an incredibly busy man. 10 to 6, this is Talk Drive.
Kemi Badenoch so far has been a disaster. Kemi, if you're watching, stop saying what you're going to do. You've been in the job a couple of months, you haven't done anything. Do something. Stop saying you're going to... You wait, we're really going to take Labour on. You wait. No, we don't want to wait. Get on with it.
It's all platitudes and headlines, isn't it? You know, I had this debate when I was hosting a week or two ago, and I said to Peter Barnes, I think, look, we need to see Kemi Badenoch's mettle. We need to know what she actually stands for.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back. No politics for a minute. 7 minutes of pure sport. Push the button, Ames.
Sport Summary on Talk.
A very good evening to a legend, Sam Ellard, Talk Sport presenter. A man who says, and I quote, "I've got my finger on the pulse." A man whose station and whose show yesterday announced that Julian Lopetegui would be leaving West Ham and Graham Potter would be taking over. This despite the fact that Lopetegui today took training, and your news was not correct, was it? Because I want him out of my club. What's happening?
Well, why is it not correct? We didn't say when did we. We just said that Jude Lopetegui would be leaving West Ham and that a new manager will be coming in. That hasn't happened yet, but I still think it's going to happen, Jeremy. Look, I think it's always a bit awkward, these situations, isn't it? When you kind of know what's going to happen, and yet Lopetegui's rocked up this morning, he's taken training. It's probably not great for him, it's not great for the players when we all know what's happening. This is simply about Graham Potter, dotting the I's, crossing the T's. With
But is it? Because there's a really interesting report out today that I wanted to put to you, Sammy, that Graham Potter is in an incredibly strong position because as well as West Ham wanted to get rid of Lopetegui, the new owners of Everton, the giants on Merseyside, who frankly have been like, ridiculous. They could be woken up. The freaking group who own Roma have taken over. They are also concerned about Sean Dyche. They are saying, certain news channels and people in the know, that Graham Potter will have his choice of West Ham or Everton. If you were Graham Potter, and I don't actually mean this as a West Ham fan, what's the better job long term? Who's going to give you that project? Because he was promised 5 years at Chelsea and got 7 months, so he'll want to be very sure that he's got time to implement his ideas.
Honestly, I think the answer to that question is Everton, because of reasons you mentioned. We know they're a massive football club who have been underperforming to a ridiculous standard over the past few years. Everton are going into a new stadium the start of next season, which is going to be unbelievable. They've got new ownership that's just come in, which is promising the football club investment to go in and buy players and get them back to where they want to be. The tricky thing with Everton is they're in this really bizarre situation where they're just above the relegation zone, they're fighting relegation, and for Everton Football Club, every single Everton fan right now would take 17th. Get 17th, get safety, and start again next season. Now, it's really interesting because Sean Dyche is there and not doing a good job, but yet if you were to pick a manager to come into the situation and get survival, it's probably not a Graham Potter sort of manager. It's probably a Sean Dyche sort of manager. I think if Graham Potter right now could guarantee himself any situation, I think it'd be the Everton job, but at the start of next season. So I think Sean Dyche will keep them up, and then he can come in, he'll have a whole pre-season. I think it's a mess. I think it's difficult coming in mid-season when you got a game every 3 days, not with your players. Look at what Amram's doing at Man United.
I'm going to throw a spanner in the works. You were right last...
I like these spanners.
You were right last night. Nottingham Forest beat Wolves. We'll talk in a tick about the Carabao semi-final cup
Good
between
games
us.
tonight, Jess. Good games.
But I'm going to say this. I'm going to say the Freaking Group are going to get a manager for next season who will bring such woof to Everton, and that Graham Potter will go to West Ham. I'm going to put my neck on the line and say that the next manager of Everton is one Jose Mourinho.
I mean, you listen, the Freaking Group, they were at Roma where Jose was, so they know the man well. I thought you were going to throw the name David Moyes. Lots of people think maybe more from a romantic point of view that Moyes going back to Everton would make sense. I mean, Mourinho would be the box office appointment.
Of course it would be.
Mourinho in Everton just feels like carnage, doesn't it?
New stadium, that gob, amazing. Let's talk about tonight. Carabao Cup, EFL semi-finals, Arsenal, Newcastle, and Spurs and Liverpool tomorrow night. Arsenal, Newcastle. Defining moment for Eddie Howe this season, I think. I think they win the Carabao Cup. You're going to laugh at me.
No, I don't think it's not laughable at all. Newcastle kind of go back to this time last month. You're sitting there thinking, where are Newcastle going under Eddie Howe? They were languishing mid-table. They've had probably the best festive period of any team in the Premier League. 5 wins in a row in the Premier League. They're up to 5th in the table. They're only a point behind Chelsea in 4th place, who people the other week were talking about being title contenders. Great game this evening. Newcastle, Arsenal, last few seasons, been a little bit needle in these sort of games. There's been lots of controversy, some big refereeing decisions. 6,000 Newcastle fans making the trip down to Arsenal this evening. And I'll tell you what, Jeremy, Newcastle in great form. Isak scoring goals, Gordon playing well, Botman's just come back. Arsenal are a team, they're just not firing on all cylinders. They're missing Bukayo Saka. I think Newcastle, especially second leg at St James's Park, I think they're going to fancy their chances tonight.
It is the best place to go, by the way, St James's Park. Tomorrow night, Liverpool Spurs. I mean, Dave Levine, good mate of mine, and a couple of other boys support Spurs. You just can't tell which team's turning up. I fear for Postecoglou. I think Spurs are just going to go round and round in circles. I see Liverpool winning that one easily.
Yeah, Liverpool will win, but they'll win something silly like 6-3 or 5-4 or 5-3 because
11-9.
Yeah, exactly that. There's always goals involved in Spurs games. I think on Postecoglou, while Spurs are suffering at the moment, I think you have to give them a little bit of leeway because they have had, I mean, I know lots of teams use injuries as an excuse, but Spurs really have had hard luck with injuries this season. I'm almost certain, given the fact that he's in the semi-final of the Carabao Cup, he should get Spurs into the knockout stage of the Europa League. I'm almost certain, but I'll give you my word, I think Postecoglou, whatever happens in the league this season, will be at Spurs until the end.
It's the quick fire round. Arsenal-Newcastle prediction tonight.
I have a feeling Arsenal might win 1-0 or 2-1 this evening, but I think Newcastle will win the second leg.
Called the quick round. Spurs-Newcastle at Liverpool tomorrow.
7-9 Liverpool.
Next West Ham manager.
What?
Does Elon Musk buy Liverpool Football Club? That's a rumour.
No, that won't happen. No, definitely no.
They'll all have they'll be Teslas. And will Nottingham Forest make the Champions League? Yes or no? Go.
Yeah, go on. I reckon they'll come fifth or get an extra place.
Good man. See you tomorrow, Sam. News at 6 is next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Hour 3 of Drive for Tuesday. This is Jeremy Kyle on Talk, the home of free speech and common sense. The man who's still fighting the voice, but we're staying there. 0344 419 1000 is the telephone number if you'd like to be on between now and 7 o'clock. You can text 87222. So much to talk about. Grooming gangs, Starmer, Jenrick saying alien cultures are responsible for everything that's wrong. But I just want to... I want to bring on my next guest because I love the man. I want to say Happy New Year to the chief political writer at Spike, Brendan O'Neill. How are you, my friend?
Hi, Jeremy. Happy New Year to you too.
And to you. I hope the voice lasts for me. Before we talk about the horrible stories about the grooming gangs, before we talk about Robert Jenrick, let's have a laugh. Donald Trump in the last hour and a half has been... You don't mind me talking, but this is just... There's some amazing sound bites. Donald Trump has stood up at Mar-a-Lago. What is it, 15 days till he gets inaugurated? 12 days or something. We all thought he was going to talk about being sentenced for the hush money trial on Friday. Very little about that, doesn't care. Probably sack the judge in a week and a half's time. He's basically decided... He wants the Panama Canal. He wants Greenland. He wants to rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. He wants to make Canada the 51st state. All wind farms are killing whales. But most of all, hell's going to break out, and I mean hell, if the hostages aren't returned home. Isn't he just amazingly, strangely, brilliantly, weirdly fantastic news?
Oh, absolutely. He just brings more joy to the world. I mean, you don't have to agree with him on everything. You don't have to be a tub thumper for America to go to Greenland or whatever. But he's a funny guy, and he shoots from the hip, and he speaks honestly. My favourite line was when he said, wind farms are driving the whales crazy.
They lost 2 whales in Alaska because of the wind farms. We'll be getting rid of the wind farms. We're going to drill, baby, drill. I mean, amazing.
Amazing. Such a good way to put it. And, you know, amid all the funny stuff, there was a serious point too, which is about the hostages in Gaza, which so few leaders in the West want to talk about, and the left in the West certainly doesn't care about. So to have him saying they're going to come home one way or another, that's a really positive message amid all the funny stuff as well.
And then on a serious note, Donald Trump told the news conference that members of NATO, and this is what I wanted to start with you on today, should be contributing 5% of their country's GDP on defence spending. The previous target has been 2%. Yet another headache for Keir Starmer and Labour as they, I don't know, look to repair relations with the incoming President of the United States. We're only paying 2% of our GDP. Many people for a long time have said we need to increase that. Is he going to go further and say that if you don't do 5%, I'm pulling out of NATO?
You know, he might well do that. He's not a fan of globalist institutions. He's a believer in the nation state. I mean, his slogan was America First for quite a long time. He thinks that nation states should look after themselves, although they do need to rally together sometimes, of course. So I think he's probably instinctively wary of NATO, just as he is of the United Nations, just as he is of all those climate change groups that we have around the world. So I wouldn't be surprised if it buckled under the pressure of Donald Trump. But, you know, I understand his anger because America is basically looking after a lot of Europe in military terms. You know, if push comes to shove, who's going to defend these places in Europe that might be invaded by Russia? It's going to have to be America. So he wants them to cough up the dough in order to make sure that NATO is war ready if necessary. So I understand where he's coming from, but I do wonder if his aim is to really push NATO over the edge and get rid of a kind of Cold War institution that he probably doesn't like.
And also maybe strong words to appear to Putin as well. One doesn't know really, but it'll be very interesting to see. I've always thought that you have to take a lot of what he says and how he says it with a pinch of salt, but underpinning so much of what he says, if you scrape away the BS, there's a lot that does make sense eventually. Let's talk at home if we can. And Brendan, really keen to get your view on the 2 main news stories that seem to be dominating. Calls for a national public inquiry into the grooming gang scandal. I'm going to call it the rape gang scandal because that's the truth. What I wanted to say, as I've said all afternoon, is I get the criticism of Keir Starmer. I'm the last person in the world that would compliment him. But this goes back decades. This isn't about Jess Phillips and Sir Keir Starmer. It might be in part about him as the Director of Public Prosecutions. I don't know. This is a stain on our country. This is a stain on us as a society. And somebody said to me earlier, which I think is absolutely spot on, if we looked at another country and saw this, we'd say it was barbaric. Absolutely barbaric. And I fear, love to know what you think, that the fact that this has been swept under the carpet for so long tells me there's so much more to this. And actually, this could go quite high up the chain. Thoughts?
You know, this is the worst scandal of the post-war period by a long stretch. It is shocking. It's one of the worst things that's happened in the modern history of our country. Because, you know, let's boil it down. What happened is that thousands of primarily white working class girls were assaulted or raped right under the nose of our bureaucracy. People knew this was happening and they looked the other way. I mean, this is one of the most shocking things that's ever happened. And I agree with you that it goes back way beyond, before Keir Starmer, before the current government. It's been going on for a long time. But, you know, what's unforgivable, I think, by Keir Starmer is for him to turn a discussion about protecting working class girls from rape into a discussion about protecting middle class MPs from mean words on Twitter. That is unforgivable because he is taking the focus away from where it should be, which is how do we protect the most vulnerable members of society from the abuse of mostly Pakistani Muslim men, which is what these gangs were primarily made up of. He's taken the focus away from that and turned it onto his own MPs because they're getting some flack on the internet.
Well,
And
also, if you look back to the election, as I said earlier, there were 5 seats north of Watford Gap, because for a lot of people who don't believe it, there is a country north of Watford Gap. 5 seats were run by independent Muslim MPs who stood on the Gaza subject and nothing locally at all. Jonathan Ashworth, for example, lost his seat. And there are many people inside the Labour Party, and I wonder if Keir Starmer's part of that fear if they alienate the Muslim vote, they will lose power. Now, that, for me, is not a way to legislate. That's not a way to rule. That's not a way for the police to do their job. And, in fact, the police admitted, didn't they, in Rotherham, that they were concerned over the years that it would cause cultural dissatisfaction. You break the law, you break the bloody law. It doesn't matter about the colour of your skin or where you come from, surely, or your religion. If you break the law, you face the consequences. It worries me that we're now getting to a point that could happen, but more so, why did nobody do anything? And do you believe that the reason is that this goes much, much higher and deeper than any of us can imagine?
I think there is still so much for us to find out, because there was a long period of time where we didn't really know this stuff was happening.
No,
I mean, the Times did some great coverage over the past 15 years, and I don't think we should ever forget what the Times did on this story. And I really disagree with Elon Musk when he said that the legacy media hid this atrocity for so long. That's not true. The Times was the paper that uncovered this atrocity. I will defend the Times to the hilt on that. But lots of other newspapers didn't touch it.
Why? Reasons why? What do you think? You know more than me.
You know, I think it's because it actually disrupts their political narrative. Because the woke political narrative says that white people are privileged and problematic, Asian people and Muslim people and brown-skinned people are oppressed. And then we have this scandal in which hundreds of primarily Muslim men were raping and abusing white working-class girls. So it interrupted with their narrative. It intruded on their self-congratulating ideologies. And they discarded it. They thought, well, we can't handle this. It's the wrong kind of perpetrator and it's the wrong kind of victim, and therefore we're going to zone it out. And that's really what happened over the past 20 years. It is utterly unforgivable.
I mean, it is, if you think about it, as I said to you, any other country we would deem to be barbaric. I keep going back to it for a reason. I just feel that there is no... You talk about it gets away from the rhetoric for them is different. But surely any politician worth their salt would go, irrespective of my politics, I'm going to do the right thing by these innocent girls whose lives have been potentially ruined and blighted forever. And actually, I might find that a majority of people consider that morally the right thing to do.
You really would think that. And I've been thinking that myself over the past couple of days, but also over the past few years, because I've been writing about this for a long time, and I know lots of other journalists have been as well. But I think it really demonstrates the power of ideology. And what we have is a ruling class now, a kind of new leftish, pseudo-liberal ruling class that is so ensnared by this ideology that it is even willing to sacrifice the safety and dignity of working class girls at the altar of that ideology.
It's absolutely disgusting. And I genuinely believe, I mean, I've sat here for weeks and I've talked about this government and pensioners. I hope that if any politician from whichever party has any involvement or as wherever, on whatever level, that they are brought to justice over however long it takes, because these are kids, for Christ's sake. Nothing more. Kids. And we as a society, right, are failed and we're embarrassed. Let me just put, we've got a couple of voice notes I'd love to play you. This is John in Essex. Have a listen. John, go.
Why is it that Keir Starmer has to put a political stance on this grooming gang investigation, inquiry, whatever you want to call it? Surely we owe it to the children of Great Britain, regardless of their nationality, upbringing, whatever it may be, we owe it to them and to the country to unfoil what's happened over the years and how we can stop it going forward.
It's completely right, isn't it, Brendan?
completely right. And, you know, we've had some news coverage of this scandal. We've had some local inquiries. We've had a kind of national inquiry into child abuse, but that wasn't really very good. But we've never had a reckoning. We've never had a real reckoning with how this happened, why it happened, why we weren't allowed to talk about it for so long, why we're still being called far right by Keir Starmer if we try to raise this problem. We need a reckoning with this across the board. How did people get away with it? Why did officials turn a blind eye? Why did the police fail? Why did the media fail? Why did the state fail?
Well, interestingly, Dan in Lingfield, I mean, this is a really interesting text. He says, I feel that the political establishment is playing whack-a-mole to keep the lie that multiculturalism is indeed a success in Great Britain. They are doing everything in their power to keep immigrant communities happy over the established British people, protecting rape gangs and jailing British people for very little. This country, if it continues like this, says Dan in Lingfield, is going to explode. And I have to say, and I'm trying to be, you know, not both realistic and calm and considered. He's not wrong, is he?
No, this is about protecting the ideology of multiculturalism and the ideology of diversity, and nothing can be allowed to get in the way of that, even the safety of some of the most vulnerable girls in our society. That's what's so shocking. But, you know, this is also incredibly offensive to Muslims.
Yes.
There are so many good Muslims in this country, good Muslim British citizens who would never dream of abusing a girl, who would never dream of doing these things. So when the political class says, oh, we can't talk about this because we might upset Muslims, they're offending Muslims as well, because they are implying that they are all complicit in this.
Completely agree with you. Best point that's been made today. Completely agree. Because what you're saying is you're tarnished, if you like, by reputation, simply by what's being said. So here's a suggestion, probably get me into trouble. Would it not be useful then for Muslim leaders to come out and speak rather clearly and concisely about what they believe is going on and how wrong that is from their point of view?
I couldn't agree more. And this scandal, alongside all the other questions it raises questions about so-called Muslim community leaders, because often these are self-selected representatives of the community who do not actually speak for the whole community, who sometimes hold quite sexist views. They always tend to be men, who have sometimes quite backward views. Sometimes they're pro-Iran, they're even pro-Hamas. We know that there are community leaders, self-styled, in this country who hold those views. It's a really undemocratic, almost colonial system where the politicians hand-pick these certain Muslims to speak for the whole community, but they don't speak for the whole community. So I think the system of community leadership, this kind of pork barrel politics that we've seen emerging, that's called into question by this as well.
The other big story of the day, Brendan, and we love you being on, thank you so much indeed, Chief Political Writer of Spike, Brendan O'Neill, with us on Talk Drive. Robert Jenrick today, some people called it a toe-curling interview. Kemi Badenoch's come out and supported her Shadow Justice Secretary. He suggested that if they are re-elected, the Tories would seek to limit immigration to the UK from what he described as alien cultures. He said that we've seen millions of people enter the UK in recent years, and some of them have backward, frankly, medieval attitudes to women. And he stood by his claim that the grooming gang scandal started with the onset of mass migration. What did you make of that, Brendan? Were the words... I believe the sentiments there. I thought the words were a bit wrong, to be honest, if I'm being straight.
You know, people are calling him racist, and I'm sure he'll get a lot of that jip, but there is a point here, which is that a country has the right to decide what kind of immigrants it wants. And that was taken as given for decades and decades. I don't know what changed over the past 20 years to make it seem that it's ridiculous and racist to say, well, we don't want immigrants from that place and we do want immigrants from that place.
Yeah, why is that racist? Surely if it's your country, you have a right to make the rules, don't you?
Absolutely. And my parents are immigrants. They came from Ireland in the 1970s, and they came for a specific reason, which was to work and to contribute to the society, which they did enormously for 50 years. So immigrants, you know, I come from an old kind of immigrant style, which is that you went to a country because you wanted to work.
Yes.
You would try your very best to integrate. Sometimes that
because you were going there to better your life, to offer something and to get something from it, to play a part, to integrate. Absolutely what Blexley was saying yesterday. That's what made this country great. There are millions, well, hundreds of thousands of people who have come to this country and brought so much, but it is absolutely rubbish to not accept there are now people who come here and take advantage of everything to the detriment of the people who have been born here.
Absolutely. And when I think about the immigrant communities I grew up with, the Irish, the Italians, the Greeks, the Lebanese, all sorts, mucking together, sometimes getting on, sometimes not getting on, working as hard as they could, looking for jobs. And you compare that to the immigration we have now, which is so-called asylum seeking, often from parts of the world where they have a very different culture to ours, and often with the assumption that they don't need to work because the country that they're coming to will look after them. This is a very different form of immigration, and I think it's very understandable that a lot of Brits don't like this new form of immigration.
And I think it's very understandable. I think it's also very enlightening that over the last year or two, people have started to speak. Now, whether it's stations like Talk, whether it's parties like Reform, if you talked about immigration in the terms that people talk about it nowadays 5 years ago, you'd have been labelled a racist. There's nothing racist about me. I don't care the colour of your skin or your religion. I don't care. But I do believe that it should be on your ability to get a job. I do believe if you come to a society, if I went and lived into another country, I wouldn't want to take advantage. What could I achieve there? Could I be integrated there? Could I get a job? Could I have a better life? I'm not going to go there and try and destroy the very fabric of something that I say I want to be part of. I think all of that has grown. But I think that the cost of living, I think that COVID, I think introspection has made a lot of British people go, hold on a minute, and I keep saying this every day, and I apologise I haven't got better words. I've paid in all my life. I've never broken the law. I feed my kids. I'm just about paying my bills. And I'm about 83rd in the queue behind a load of people who've done bugger all. And I think people are hacked off. I really do.
Yeah, they are hacked off. And, you know, I was thinking about this recently, that point you make about if you were to go to another country, you would try to integrate. When I holiday in other countries, I try to make sure I don't do anything untoward or bad. Like, for example, if I went to France or Italy or somewhere else, I wouldn't speak really loudly on my phone in public because you don't know how people might take the English language and they might feel offended because you're shouting in a foreign tongue. People have this kind of general consciousness where they think, look, I'm in another country, they're hosting me, they're being kind to me, I'm going to play along with their rules, and I'm going to, even if I go there for 2 or 3 weeks, never mind for life. But when you say that people are sick of being called racist for criticising these issues or raising these issues, you know what's really interesting? I think that stuff doesn't work anymore. And I think that's one of the reasons the political class and the media class are so hacked off right now, because all their old accusations of people being far right and racist or transphobic if they believe in biological sex or Islamophobic if they criticise the Quran, those insults aren't landing anymore. It's just not washing. And I think they're realising that their power to insult us and to silence us is actually waning. And I think that's a very positive development.
Listen, it is always an absolute pleasure, and I mean that, to have you on, Brendan. We want you on every single week. We wish you a very happy New Year. Thank you so much indeed. Brendan O'Neill, Chief Political Writer of Spike. 6:21. This is Drive Time and Talk, the home of free speech and common sense. My God, been busy today. We'll get some calls on as well. Loads more still to go. We're going to look at the weather. Oh, honest to God, I know this is the wrong thing to say, and I'll probably get told off. Why is it wherever I live in this bloody country I never get to see snow? Now somebody's going to complain because they can't get out their front door. 0344 419 1000. This is Talk Drive.
Kemi Badenoch so far has been a disaster. Kemi, if you're watching, stop saying what you're going to do. You've been in the job a couple of months, you haven't done anything. Do something. Stop saying you're going to... You wait, we're really going to take Labour on. You wait. No, we don't want to wait. Get on with it.
It's all platitudes and headlines, isn't it? You know, I had this debate when I was hosting a week or two ago, and I said to Peter Barnes, I think, look, we need to see Kemi Badenoch's mettle. We need to know what she actually stands for.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 6:25 Tuesday night. This is Jeremy Kyle on Talk Drive. Thanks for tuning in. The home of free speech and common sense. Kev O'Sullivan here from 7 o'clock. And the amazing Petrie Hoskins from 10, 0344 419 1000. Safeguarding Minister Jess Phillips has in the last few moments hit back at Elon Musk and has said that disinformation spread by him was endangering her, but that it was nothing compared to the experiences of the victims of abuse. The tech billionaire and soon-to-be advisor to the incoming President Donald Trump labelled Phillips a rape genocide apologist and said she should be jailed. Jess Phillips asked if the threat to her own safety had gone up since his social media post, said yes, but she said the experience had, yes, been tiring, but that she was resigned to the lot in life that you get as a woman who fights for women's rights. She added, I'm no stranger to people who don't know what they're talking about, trying to silence women like me. And then she came out with the line of the day when she went, Elon, why don't you just crack on and try and get to Mars and possibly stay there? 0344 419 1000, text to 87 222. I've sort of fought against... No, I'm joking. Listen, this is London. I live on the south coast, just a lot of rain. The rest of this country, this is snow joke. See what I did there? Snow joke. You see, we're moving it. We're moving on. The rest of the country is having a terrible time. Joe Wheeler, that was great, wasn't it? Meteorologist at Square Raindrop. She usually says, Julia Wheeler. How are you, Julia?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm all right, mate. I've been really ill, and that's probably affected me. It's all the drugs. Joe Wheeler. That's brilliant. Well done, Jez. Happy New Year. You look fantastic.
Thank you very much. It's been a very entertaining new year because, of course, the weather's been chop change, lots of drama, many crises, and no more so than tomorrow, where I'm not entirely sure whether I'm the good fairy or the bad fairy at the christening as far as you're concerned.
Oh, God.
We are looking at a system coming up from the south, which is likely to brush through southernmost counties, which could well bring some snow. But this is very much a one to watch.
I have to say, everybody gets really excited pre-Christmas. Is it going to be a white Christmas? And, of course, if you don't see the snow, and I'm one of those people, you go, oh, my God. But for many people, the length and breadth of this country, this snow has had the most appalling impact. There's been flooding. Why do we seemingly, Joe, serious question, seem incapable of dealing with different forms of weather after all these years? There always seems to be a problem, doesn't there?
Yeah, what has happened over the past few days is what happens every single time that we have cold air across us. Whatever air mass you have, you probably need rain to change it. And always, when we've got cold air across the country and we see something coming in, we get what's called an undercut. So the cold air sits there kind of cold and heavy, going, I'm not going anywhere. And the warm air comes in, can't shift the cold, it goes over the top. And then what falls through it falls as sleet or snow before eventually the mild air catches up. So this happens time and time and time again. What we've seen just recently, first of all, with Storm Bert.
Yeah.
And of course, many warnings put out for that initially.
There were, absolutely, yeah.
And then, again, milder air catching up. And, of course, we saw that terrible flooding over parts of Wales. This time we've seen the same thing. We've seen cloud, rain, turning to snow, pushing its way northwards. Then it stalled, and it was that stalling that caused problems because, OK, we were focusing on the snow because that was the wintry weather. It shut down the airports, it shut various roads, people couldn't get places. But just to the south of that, where the snow turned back to rain, we saw fairly significant rainfall, and that caused flooding.
Yeah, Sunday night, I guess it must have been, the rain down where we are on the south coast is absolutely extraordinary. And yet I spoke to some friends in Newcastle, they got 2 inches of snow. I'm not into the green thing at all, but is this because of climate change? You're going to tell me it is, aren't you, as a meteorologist or whatever you are? You're going to tell me that, no, are you? No?
Absolutely nothing of the sort. As I say, this is how we transition from cold air to mild.
Good girl. So it's not all the bedwetters are going to go on about, you know, it's the green issues and all that and the weather. No, absolutely. Tell me something on a personal level. How does this stuff excite you? How do you? Because this genuinely does excite you, doesn't it?
It does. Well, if you look at a system like tomorrow, this is something coming from the Atlantic, down from the southwest. Again, we know it's carrying a lot of mild air. We know it's carrying a lot of moisture. But where is it going? Because it's not just us that have got the cold air, it's over parts of France as well. Now, as this system comes in, we'll see the winds picking up. It's going to be very strong easterly through the channel. And, as I say, the potential with the collision of this system and the cold air currently over the country, that we could see some snow on its leading edge. If it pushes a long way north, and by that I'm talking just north of London, well, we could start to see milder air coming behind it. But I don't think it'll come that far north. I think it's going to affect southernmost counties and then retreat. It's going no further. It's going to leave us with this cold air, certainly until the weekend, when we probably will see milder conditions coming in. Might I also just say that tonight, after a very blustery day, the winds drop out and we could see patches of freezing fog. And eastern Wales, central parts of England. Well, it's yet another hazard and one we haven't had this week. So I thought I'd just add it to the clutch we've already got.
Why is it? I mean, honest to God, honestly, freezing fog, rain, floods, snow, leaves on the line. Try getting a train. They're all on strike anyway. So you genuinely, I mean, you probably have a WhatsApp group of sad meteorologists. You get excited when it's snowing and raining and windy and freezing fog and low cloud and all that. You literally get excited by this, don't you?
Yeah, yes, well,
turned on by people's misery, Wheeler.
It's not a question of people's misery. I mean, you know, every single British person meeting up with a stranger is going to say, oh, the weather's been nice recently, or it looks like snow, doesn't it? You know, the weather is a topic of conversation. And of course it is, because we're in Ireland. We're surrounded by water. And from Scotland down to the south coast, I think we had a disparity of 23 degrees the other day.
I saw that. It was 13 degrees on the south coast and something like -10 in the Scottish Highlands. You're absolutely right. And that, and you think about the size of America, and then you think of the size of the United Kingdom. So you see, I knew we were an island, but that's why we're basically screwed, because there's all sorts of weather coming from all sides, right? So what are we expecting? More snow, more floods, more freezing fog, more. What else is there? Steroids? What is it called? What are those things that drop down? Hail. That's it. Not steroids. Yeah.
It does look as though we've got a system trying to make its way eastwards on Friday. Now again, this will be another system running into cold air. And we'd expect that. And eventually, when one of these things clears through and actually pulls in the milder air, then, you know, we can all settle down to a different regime for a short time. This, in fact, probably brings milder conditions, but it sort of fizzles out as it comes, or at least that's what it looks like at the moment.
What about the end of the month? The 31st and the 1st and 2nd in Newcastle. What's the weather going to be like there in 3 weeks' time? Any idea?
No, something. I don't need charts for that. I need a crystal ball. But I can tell you that actually, once we get over all of this, we are looking at a fairly prolonged settle period. I think high pressure is going to stay very close by until kind of the 3rd week in January. That's the way it looks. Things can change. Again, that's a bit of crystal ball gazing, but as you say, I'm very sad, and that's what I spend my time looking at.
You know, you're absolutely amazing. We shared many an early morning, and we love you so much indeed, and we're so grateful from... What is square raindrop, then? What does that mean?
It's basically myself and a colleague, and we looked at the fact that people come on the television or on the radio and tell you what the weather's going to be like, whereas, in fact, there's often uncertainty, or there's often a situation where it can go one way or the other. So we set it up really as talking weather together. So 2 weather forecasters chatting over the options, which in your terms is probably worse than just being excited.
Just get out more, woman, seriously. 2 weather forecasters chatting. Oh, today it's going to be wet. We love you, Joe. Thank you so much indeed. Joe Wheeler, Happy New Year, 25 to 7. Yes, she's called Joe Wheeler. Not what did I call her at the beginning? I can't even remember. 25 minutes ahead of Kev O'Sullivan. Still to come, Kinsey Schofield, royal commentator and US commentator. Loads from her and more of your calls on 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. This is Talk Drive.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
The Thinking Woman's Crumpet, Ian Collins, back to our tomorrow afternoon from 1 o'clock in the afternoon here on Talk, the home of free speech and common sense. This is JK. Elon Musk creating a stir. We've got a voice note. James, go.
Just a quick one on the Labour Party and Elon Musk. What we can say about Elon Musk is Elon Musk has done more for this world, more for the people of this world, than what Labour have done for this country. And that's just one guy. And how many people's in Labour Party? So I think Labour need to back down on this one, because you're not going to win against Elon Musk.
Very interesting. Thank you, James. You can do that voice note via WhatsApp 0344 499 1000. Hello to Lorraine, who says, woe is me, Jess Phillips. Rather than hurty words, I bet it's very exhausting being farmed out for gang rape at the age of 14. Shame you, Jess Phillips, failed our young white girls for your own political gain. Actions speak louder than words, Jess. Lorraine, I'm going to say this, not because I know Jess Phillips, not because I know she's done an awful lot about safeguarding. She has been in that job 6 months. This has been going on for flipping decades. Yes, the Labour government absolutely should have a national inquiry right now, but successive governments and successive ministers have swept this under the damn carpet. Good evening to Chris. Evening, Jez. I think Elon Musk is brilliant, saying it as it is. The one to Ed Davey was brilliant. They can't do anything. He's doing what Khan always says and does. Remember... What? Anyway, he likes him. He absolutely loves Elon Musk. Here's a person who knows more about America than anybody else so far today, because she lives there. We welcome and say a magnificent Happy New Year to the woman who's appeared on American television with me many times, Kinsey Schofield. Good evening.
JK, if I was there, I'd have a cup of soup for you. I'm so sorry you're not feeling well.
I needed you to come and... honestly, mate, no, I'm better. I don't sound better now, but I spent 2.5 weeks with this flu. I mean, proper flu.
I'm so sorry. I'm glad you're feeling better enough to come back to work.
And Mrs. Kyle couldn't even look after me because she had it as well. So I was thinking of flying you over to tend to my illnesses.
Well, I would. I'm not very good, so you would have sent me right back. You would have
you're not very sympathetic to men being ill.
I'm very sympathetic. I just don't think that I'm qualified, is what I'm trying to tell you.
I don't care about qualified. I just wanted to see you and have a laugh with you. Welcome to the show. Happy New Year. How was Christmas stateside?
It was great. I saw some sea lions. I had a California Christmas, and I watched yours as well. Yours looked sweet, so sweet on social media. If you're not following JK on Instagram, you have to, because he's a hoot.
You're very kind. Before we talk about Prince Andrew, Meghan's new cooking show, which is hugely exciting, the 47th President of the United States of America has recently, as much as 2 hours ago, stood up at Mar-a-Lago. We thought he was going to talk about the fact that this Friday he's going to be, I think they're going to decide what his punishment should be for the Stormy Daniels hush money trial. He didn't seem to want to talk about that. I just want to say to an American, this is brilliant. He wants to get for himself and for you the Panama Canal and Greenland. That's interesting. He wants to rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. He basically wants to destroy all wind farms because they're killing the whales. You know, 2 whales died. They're killing the whales. And basically, which is absolutely fantastic, he's caused Trudeau to resign by saying that he believes that Canada should be the 51st state of the United States of America. I bet the liberal lefties, judging by the look on Kamala Harris's face yesterday when she had to say yes, it's true. Her face looked like somebody had put a dog turd under her nose. I bet the wet lefties in America are having an absolute ball, aren't they?
Oh, I mean, you and I discussed this throughout the campaign. Donald Trump has to stay on point. Donald Trump has to stay focused. And this is one of those examples of him going off script.
But he's won now. He can do what he bloody well wants, Kins.
Exactly. But while we think it's hilarious, I do think that he would be better off focusing on the economy. How can he lower gas prices? How can he, is Canada becoming the 51st state something that is on our minds? No.
No, absolutely. But it would be fair to say from the rest of the world's perspective that Justin Trudeau absolutely sums up exactly what's wrong with woke, left-wing, soft, liberal politicians. And how ironic that as Trump arrives in the White House, he's scuttled off. We're the only bloody country in Europe. Europe's gone to the right, America's gone to the right, and we're stuck with this communist idiot Sir Keir Starmer. I bet you don't want to move here anymore, do you?
I do, because I love you guys. But I think about with Trudeau, do you remember when the truckers didn't want to get the shot?
Yeah.
And he froze their bank accounts.
He did.
I mean, he was out of control during the plague. So in my personal opinion, this is coming way later than it should have.
So good to see you. Right, let's talk royals, because let's be honest, that's what you do. Prince Andrew... God, it doesn't get any... Andrew, just go to the Scottish Highlands and don't come back. Prince Andrew reported to the police for fake name on company files. How do you fake name being Prince Andrew? What do you call yourself? I mean, that's ridiculous, man. What is wrong with him? He's an idiot.
I think I'm going to surprise you here, JK. I feel like we've got to lay off of this guy. He's done what he said he was going to do. He's gone off to disappear in his huge estate, Royal Lodge. When it came to the Chinese spy scandal, I felt like maybe we were going too hard on him then, because I did feel like he was a scapegoat for other government officials that had way more interaction with this individual.
Do you know what? I'm so pleased you said that, because there's no doubt he's an Egypt, right? There's no doubt that for years his mother forgave him or made excuses for his behaviour, and he's an idiot. The thing that I've always said to you, and I will stand by, is... he's not the only one in the royal household that's made mistakes, and his have been amplified quite rightly. But there must come a point where he accepts that he cannot show his face anymore, and we leave it alone. I genuinely believe that. But one thing we can't leave alone, because every time we don't leave this alone, the audience spikes and everybody smiles. Meghan Markle's got a new cooking show, which Netflix have said will be reality. What does that mean? Is it the reality is that she's cooking? Is it that somebody in a loincloth's going to jump out with a pair of oven gloves naked? I don't know. What does that mean, reality TV, as Meghan cooks, what, a souffle or something crap?
reality TV as Megan is in a stranger's kitchen that has been rented, not even her own. You and I have been in the industry long enough to know that reality TV equals highly produced, potentially scripted, incredibly manipulated. That's what reality TV means. And I do think that Megan's show falls under that. Do you remember when she tried to tell us that she was rejected by the Prince and Princess of Wales? She was just the t-shirt and jeans girl. And now she's in like Givenchy, $6,000, $7,000 worth of jewelry on her wrist, cooking up a frittata. It's interesting that she has always tried to downplay and be like, I'm just the girl next door. What girl is your wife in stilettos in the kitchen? Tell me. I mean, is that
Well, I mean, if she is when I get home, I'll let you know, but that would be fantastic. No, she'll be asleep because she's up all night with Iris. Can I ask you, though, you talk about it. There she is in her Gucci and her stilettos cooking a frittata. Is there any part of him, or not her, because that goes, how goddamn embarrassing is this? Why don't you just leave it? Go off, a bit like Andrew. You didn't want to be part of this. You tried. You're not welcome back here. That's patently obvious. Just disappear, lady. Just go and live your life in California. Just stop trying, because there is not surely a point, isn't there, in the public, if you're in the public eye, where you know when it's all over. When you know that there's no coming back. When you know that too many people are hacked off with you.
She is defiant. On the day of 2 terror attacks in the United States of America, Meghan Markle launches her Instagram account to promote her reality show. I mean, read The Freaking Room. This is a woman that is determined and desperate. That is what you are seeing right now. You're absolutely right. She should go away. And, you know, I do think that Prince Harry is on that team because he has disappeared. He's in her Instagram feed for a blink and you'll miss him in her trailer. He's not on her profile picture. I mean, I do think that Prince Harry, who barely appeared in the Polo series, he doesn't want this life. She's desperate for it. And that is where you will see them deviate. And that is where
What did I say? And what was the look on your face all those years ago? What did I say? And I got absolutely slaughtered by it. I said they will be divorced within 5 years and he will be back in England with his ginger tail between his legs, and her and her 2 ginger children will be in America, and she'll demand loads and loads of money and sell lots of stories. And I'll tell you what I've changed in the last few months. I believe the British people will forgive Prince Harry in the long run.
Wow.
In the long run.
Well, he's already working on that campaign, doing all the charity work, separating himself from
There's
her
only
brand.
so long that you continue to be blank whipped, isn't there? We can't use the first word. I think the rub of
Well,
the...
we wouldn't because we're proper people.
Well, no, we might end up on Jimmy Kimmel again if we say a rude word, don't you think?
True. We were in his best of. Congratulations.
Yeah, by the way, for people that don't know, we've starred on Jimmy Kimmel now twice. You were in the year's best of show. Before you go, I love you. I need you to come and see us soon. Elon Musk has taken on this extraordinary role now where he's suggesting that you Americans on X should liberate the British from their tyrannical government. I couldn't agree more, although I don't think it's down to the Americans. What's the American view of Elon Musk? Because he said Farage is crap, Starmer should... he's getting really involved over here. What's the American view?
Look, we think he's incredibly intelligent, and he's got friends in high places, obviously, but it does come off as arrogance and a power trip so close to the inauguration. I'd love to see what he's capable of doing. He's proven himself in the technology arena, but government is an old boys club. You have to be charming, manipulative, strategic, and wealthy. It's a lot of moving parts, and he will not be welcomed with open arms.
Do you think he'll fall out with Trump? That's what I think will happen.
If he doesn't watch himself, he needs to proceed with caution, but he's got to prove himself in the Department of Government Efficiency in the Trump administration before he starts offering advice to other governments.
I think the advice is well said, but probably not from him. We really appreciate it. One final thing, did you watch the darts over the Christmas period on the television out there? Did you watch the World Darts Championship in America? Did you, Luke Littler?
You know what? I'm going to be honest with you. I missed that one.
OK. Listen, lots of love. Happy New Year. So good to have you on. Last time I saw you, you had a little snow hat, Christmas hat on your H on Hollywood there, but it's good to have you back, and happy 2025, Kins. And lots of love, and we'll see you very soon. Thank you, Kinsey Schofield. 12 minutes to 7 o'clock, 12 minutes away from Kevin O'Sullivan, here with his political asylum from 7 till 10, followed by The Late Show, of course, with the excellent Petri Hoskins ahead of 6 o'clock in the morning. Do not go anywhere. The main man, the main show. He's the backbone of this radio and television station. Mike Graham, back tomorrow morning with Morning Glory. This is Talk Drive.
Kemi Badenoch so far has been a disaster. Kemi, if you're watching, stop saying what you're going to do. You've been in the job a couple of months. You haven't done anything. Do something. Stop saying you're going to... You wait. We're really going to take Labour on. You wait. No, we don't want to wait. Get on with it.
It's all platitudes and headlines, isn't it? You know, I had this debate when I was hosting a week or two ago, and I said to Peter Barnes, I think, look, we need to see Kemi Badenoch's mettle. We need to know what she actually stands for.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Back to the phone lines. Colchester, Marcus, you got 1.5 minutes on Talk Drive. Go.
Hello, good evening. Isn't Kinsey Schofield wonderful? I go on sound when you're on, and when she comes on, I go on visual.
Right, OK. Kinsey Schofield.
Anyway,
is that all you're ringing me about? No?
No. No, I was just going to make a comment about that poor music teacher.
Yes.
I understand that he offered up his comments on...
This is the story from earlier, a Talk exclusive. Martin Speake, an academic and saxophonist for 50 years, was asked at the college in London where he taught Trinity, were there problems, was there racial inequality? And he wrote back and said no systematic racial inequality. Got spurned when it was leaked by the teachers, by the lecturers, by the staff and by the students, and is basically banished, and his career is in tatters. And the campaign for free speech are helping him try and get something back from a very unfortunate situation. That's a true story.
Yeah, he offered it up as an opinion, and that's based on his observations and experience and the perception that probably most people haven't got.
Oh, yes, it's his opinion, and it's probably right, but it doesn't go with what the bedwetters think. That's why he's got into trouble. That's what's wrong with our bloody country, isn't it?
He was not offering up as a kind of scientific analysis. It was an opinion. It was a snapshot of his view at that time. Now, do you remember those good old days when you involved yourself in an argument and somebody who you were arguing with used to say, no, that's not quite true, because... And you'd thrash it out. You have a thesis, you have an antithesis, and then you result in synthesis. And you can either hold on to your position or change it, depending on the strength of the other person's argument. Do you remember those good old days?
Yeah, I do. I remember those good old days when, you know, when women didn't have penises, they had wombs, and when you could have an opinion. And also, honestly, the world's gone barking mad. You and I are just a couple of old dinosaurs who should be put out to pasture. Thank you to Marcus in Colchester. Let's go to Bristol. Let's go to Ben. Ben, you're on Talk Drive. A very good evening. How are you?
Hi, Jeremy. First time talking to you. Jeremy, this not COVID inquiry, this grooming gang inquiry, I hate to break it to you. How can a corrupt system audit itself? Nobody's saying that. Everyone's calling out for inquiry. Who's going to run it? The Tories and Labour, who are behind all of this, who just did one of the most corrupt whitewashing inquiries ever in living memory with the COVID, where they just said, why didn't you lock down more? Why didn't you do this? The truth is our system is so broken, our politics is so broken that we needed Elon Musk, an eccentric billionaire, to take over Twitter, and it was the only way that this truth could get broadcast into our nation. And what everyone thinks about, you know, the guy who's in prison right now, I think he's pretty sincere and he called out the problems.
He's also a convicted criminal if you're talking about Tommy Robinson, but we'll all have different opinions on that. The fact of the matter is, let's be honest about Tommy Robinson. There's many people who listen to this station who support Tommy Robinson, and a lot of what Tommy Robinson does resonate with people, but the fact is that Tommy Robinson is a convicted felon, and Nigel Farage says he doesn't want you. But I will say this to you, Ben, in Bristol, I completely agree. We are getting to a point where so much is going on in our society, do we trust that it will ever be righted? Very quickly to Worcester. Charlotte, you got 1 minute because Kev O'Sullivan's blown me away and arrived in the studio on time. Charlotte, what'd you say?
Well, firstly, I have to agree with your previous caller 100%, but one question I'd like to ask is, where are all the Muslim elders? When the riots were kicking off, the police went and consulted.
Said it earlier, completely agree. I think that with all of this grooming, well, let's call it the rape gang, all that's being said, this is a very, very small minority of a certain section. And if it is Muslim men, British Pakistani men, why aren't community leaders and other people? That's Kev O'Sullivan, whose microphone isn't worth, just walked straight in front of the camera. Love him. Why are they not coming out and saying, that's Kev O'Sullivan again, he's now stood in front of the camera, it's all gone to. Why are they not coming out and saying, this is not what we are about? That's the answer, Charlotte, isn't it?
Well, the thing is, they can't say it because it's Islam, and if you read the Quran, I'm afraid that there's a lot to answer for in that book. And if you're a Muslim who follows the Quran to the letter, then some of these things are allowed. So,
listen, I appreciate your call, Charlotte. There on Talk Drive. Kev, we've had this. Why have you walked?
I tell you, look, the microphone thing wouldn't fit, so Jodie came in and fitted it for me.
There's the thought, ladies and gentlemen. You just tuned in. Jodie's just come in and shown Kev how to get it in. Yeah. How are you, my friend?
I'm very, very well, Jeremy. How about you? I'm worried about you.
No, I'm getting there.
You sound a lot better today.
Do you know what proctors are?
No.
This is extraordinary. For the clarity of voice for performers, public speakers and singers, I've had one lodged in the gap of my teeth for most of the show, and it sends a powerful thing down your throat. Yeah. I've also got Chinese medicine, and I won't lie, I told you earlier, my driver Ben got it for me. It's tasted sort of a cross between marzipan and dog poo, but it's been very... No, honestly, if you know what that tastes like. Mate, this grooming gang story ain't going anywhere, and I talked to you about this last night. This isn't just about Starmer and Jess Phillips. I suspect this goes seriously deeper. Seriously.
Yeah, but I think Starmer's got skin in the game, to say the least.
Of course.
The people of this country want an inquiry.
They do.
And Starmer turning around and saying we're far right if we want that. That is a disgrace.
No, mate, completely with you. In fact, he would get some political capital, the idiot, if he said yes to a public inquiry, because the Tories for 14 years didn't. Yeah, and that's a very good point.
They're maintaining, they said, oh, you know, Saint Jess Phillips, she's such a great woman. She's so caring. cares about vulnerable kids. Well, so call an inquiry then.
It's a simple one, isn't it?
If you block an inquiry, that doesn't look like you care about vulnerable kids.
It's the same people who say I care about women's rights, and when the transgender argument comes up, they don't care about women who feel vulnerable.
Exactly. They're in big trouble on this, Labour. Starmer is the world's worst politician. He should never have said that. That nonsense about the far right, just like in the
second time. Riots
just like
and this.
If he sees something he doesn't like or someone he doesn't agree with, they're far right, they're far right.
You're doing that voice again, it's frightening. What else on the show, my friend?
Well, Rod Little's coming on for the first half hour, which should be entertaining.
He's amazing.
I'll get his take on the Farage versus Musk dispute, which is extremely entertaining. Then Ben Habib's going to come on, who will be very interesting on it. Did you see what he tweeted yesterday?
Well, I had him on yesterday. I had him on at the beginning.
Did you see what he tweeted?
Yeah, did you?
He's told you.
I think it's very interesting.